were expecting. Because they really thought they'd have it done tonight, but as it was going in, they really needed to drop off big time to get over on the other side, which meant it was very deep.
Mhm.
But it's coming along nice. And while that road is closed, I've had Jimmy spend a little extra time up there cutting back some of that brush and more. Yes, it looks a little bit like a war zone, but it'll come, it'll be,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you can at least see to the ditch now and well, you must notice that when you're coming down. And so take advantage of that road being closed for that because that type of work takes a lot of work for that little head. And takes a lot of watching, and so in most cases, we don't try to go after a whole bunch of that, because it's especially, but Stratford Road is one of our busier roads, so that's why I said, yeah, let's hit it while that's all.
Yeah.
He's not gonna fight the traffic too.
I think there's a lot less traffic on it, even with Drew open.
Yeah, I think, I don't, a lot of people that come in from Stratford must go somewhere else, this and that.
County Road.
Okay.
West Tunbridge.
And but like, I had forgot to let the chloride company know that the road was not accessible. And so they were up on top of Minden Mountain and they told me to find out some particulars, and I said, oh, you're gonna have to bring Sharon, come up over that way, and guy was a little nervous about doing that, and then he got over in Stratford, and he said, well, I delivered that garage anyhow, I don't really So that's kind of what that was.
And Pike too, right? They were, Pike wanted to access them.
Pike was a little upset, but as it turned out, they didn't do anything, it's been wet and rain. So, they didn't, weren't nothing that they lost it. And we got a couple load of that sand from up to northeast.
Mhm.
Well, it really does look pretty good. And it's well, it's close to $12 a ton, but it's pretty safe. It looks good. It's like 15, so that's not awfully far off. Plus, you gotta get it here. That's the game right there. Get it here. And Larry has been pecking away at the west side of Tunbridge, and that's looking pretty good.
Well, he's the mayor of West Tunbridge.
It's scary when you see that road.
Rating or what?
We've been pushing the grader. We've been pushing the grader. It comes after grading and rain, but we've been pushing it along, see what we can get accomplished.
Pretty good days coming.
So here, back to the cutting the brush, is Pickett's machine just plain more rugged than our mower?
Yeah.
It's more rugged, plus you can, it's an excavator, it's designed to be able to see.
I see it, no one.
You can really see what he's up to.
Yeah.
And you can duck in and out of these things, and it's it's way over what we got, but you can't do 70 miles on a track machine.
Right,
You've gotta have a wheel machine for that kind of thing.
this is a specialty thing, just to do what we're doing.
And I would like to invite it back next year, I would, be honest with you.
Yep.
And that brings you to,
What was that been on?
How many?
West Tunbridge?
No,
Track and
we get our stuff first. How many miles has he run out of time?
I didn't talk to him today, but, cause the last couple of days he has been busy doing other things, and I don't know if he's gone up past where you were talking about, cause I take it the machine's now moved from where it was. And he's been in there, but he was gonna give me a buzz so I could come over and actually see it in there.
Cause he made it up to Benson's. Timmy Benson's.
Cause I'm kinda hoping he can make it over and go up past Whalens Barn, it's like. And, maybe if it's a matter of one more day, maybe you guys can say, yeah, look, for another day. To get that,
What's the charge of that?
you know. It was set in stone last year, but I can't remember what it really did say. Cause I might be wrong, but I thought it said something about. Let's just say, I think he said it was under $100.
It's reasonable, then.
But I can't swear to that, but I do know that all that stuff is. You know, it's all expensive material,
Right.
not the machinery that gets out there and does that, so I don't really know that part of it.
Yeah.
I should, I admit, I should, but it was a year ago we set this up, but I vaguely can remember what those numbers were.
So you say you've been grading a little bit.
We've been trying.
Yeah.
We've been trying to keep the dust down.
Yeah, you done well with that. I didn't stop.
And,
Yeah, at least you stop grading the roads and stop raining.
yeah, that's a possibility too, but I've been asked to keep on pushing, so I know where to.
Cloud seeding. Just have to-
But where you did like on Monarch Hill, once it got set, that was pretty good, even though it does rain, it only mucks up a little tiny bit.
Mr. Pickett's gonna, help us do that ditch project up there on Vickman. I got the culverts for it today. I'm kind of waiting for this job to get done and then we'll try to get a plan put together to do that job up there.
Oh, you're kind of cut off from your own garage, right?
What? I need not know that I'm going.
Yeah.
That's about what I got to tell you.
I can't think of any questions.
My.
Have you used that new cord?
Yeah. We
You probably can't tell if it works or not.
Well, we've only used 1,500 gallons so far, but. That's,
Oh, you got a new trailer?
we're building a trailer, it's almost finished, tank went on there today, and hitch went onto it today, and. But we're real close, we just gotta. Basically, we gotta hook up the sprayer. To where it goes on the back. And we bolt the tank down and that thing's ready to ride now.
You heard anything about the new truck?
Yeah, I talked to some people about a new truck, last Friday, Thursday. And, you won't believe it, but been in the shop. And now they're waiting for parts to put it together.
I do believe it. Well, if they're working,
They can coordinate that.
yeah, they are.
I-
They were-
I just can't believe, you know, this thing has been coming for a year and a half or better. To them.
Caught them by surprise.
It took us another 6 months to get one put together that we wanted. So this thing has been thought of for 2 years now and, now they're still waiting for a truck body and the framework stuff to come in.
So you do business.
Wait for the cars to go up.
I'll do it for the sun up.
What about the loader? Did we found money for that?
Yes, we have
In
money.
this fiscal year?
Yeah.
That's gonna be changed out Thursday if everything goes well.
Cool.
They,
They put on different bucket.
yeah. I wasn't happy with the big bucket that was on it. I think it's through the years, it was just overworked machine anyhow, and. Didn't want it. Besides, there's a lot of swaying when it's up in the air. It's really, it packs a load.
What did it have for a bucket?
Well, I had a 3-yard bucket that was coming with it, but it's got a lot of steel in the 3-yard bucket, and just that much extra weight does kind of rock when you get it up. And so he's downsized that only 1/4 yard, but it the loader handles that better.
Yeah.
What do we have on the one at the moment? Pretty simple.
My truck, it's new windshields, one of those from in 17. I'm
Come on in.
probably gonna have to, I don't know who can fix it. But
Hopefully you.
I'm gonna have to have the hoist cylinder fixed on that truck, so,
Yeah.
it does drip a little, and inspection people don't want it go through, so we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
Deal with that, even though it works really good, you might, 3-4 drops with bad time and dropped on that floor.
We'll do the old John Blakeman method.
That's right.
Got enough an old 5-gallon jug and wire it up there.
Fire it up.
When it gets full, you can screen it.
Put it in your furnace.
That's not all I got for you.
You decide on
I got stuck right at your dooryard,
I could hear him.
yeah,
It was one of the dump trucks. Trying to, a car passing a dump truck.
one of the worker dump trucks.
I think it was. There were like 4 or 5 dump trucks that went up in the afternoon, and I could hear one of them down there got in trouble. A little ditching to do.
Yeah, well,
Would've been done.
That's not bad.
it's a famous little mud hole right there anyhow.
What were you gonna say, John?
Oh, just, did we sign a date for the Stratford paving?
Yes and no. He's been notified it's gonna take, it needs to be done. He's given me a potential of getting it done during the middle of August. But,
Train them.
I had, yeah. I had to get, the culverts cleaned and this and that, which we've done that already. But in the process of doing that, I found a spot that needs to be fixed right beside the brook. And, that needs to be fixed before they pave. Don't wanna fix it and then put a machine out on it, brand new stuff. So we gotta fix that, then Matt knows that's important. Try to get him next 2 weeks to take care of it.
Get pushed back to the numbers.
We'll follow an unfair weekend.
Well, that's close to when they wanna do this second part of this job over here.
All right, you can leave.
Good.
Thank you, Ron.
I don't think he got the culvert.
Huh?
I don't think he got the
No.
culvert. It's about it.
The new tower ain't supposed to bother our radio system, right?
I asked him yesterday when he was here, on Monday if he was here, and he said no, because it's such a low frequency on that cell tower. It won't interfere.
Good.
Have we heard more about what schedule is on the plan?
Well, Amy's here maybe to give us an update.
No, not cell phone, but the
Oh, the
due to
There's possibility that if I get the cell phone working, I'll wear it.
guy from Haverhill, like what's our schedule?
Ah,
The guy from Haverhill.
the radio swing.
oh, Doug,
Yeah, Doug, how's that going?
I met with him on Monday.
I didn't expect to hear from him again probably until we had a license in hand.
So we're waiting for the license.
He's working on the license. He came and got some of our blank town sheets. He's applying the Lebanon, Northfield. And that, although he's not applying the FAA, we'll tell him what he's gonna do.
Okay.
And he knows some of the people there. He knows the police chief, so he's gonna call everybody and try to smooth the way.
All right,
Nice.
All right, thanks, Ronnie.
great, Amy, you're next. Yeah.
Mariah put me on the. I know she said she was gonna sleep in.
She wrote your name in.
Okay, great.
Not on mine.
Oh, just online.
Nice.
Yeah.
Gary has his competition.
Yeah, I do.
So I emailed all of you today, because I just have this list of like recommendations that we kind of came up with out of our planning commission meeting.
No, it's really good.
Okay, well, good, I have that, I'm just gonna present that, and I have another. More information, so. Mhm.
They didn't say at the meeting what that was gonna cover.
So you mean the community meeting?
Yeah,
He didn't say.
what's that?
He didn't say,
Okay.
he
I
was
just-
very light
Thought that
on
was weird.
specifics,
They
yeah,
didn't say that.
he said he
He
could.
said he could do it.
Yes, he said he could get us the information, but. Didn't have it at his fingertips, so. John was at the meeting, the community meeting, it was, you know. Didn't feel like great, I mean, it was a tough one, cause. It was a hard meeting and.
He called us Tunbridge for first half hour.
He was looking at you, right?
So that, you know, and he didn't have a lot of detail, people wanted some more information. Just couldn't find it. So at any rate, we, at our planning commission last week, we had thought that really what we wanted to do was sort of think about everything that was presented and then come to you guys with a sort of what our advice, our recommendations for what you guys think about doing. So, and that's kind of also something we discussed, is that's where we sort of see our role is like, what. Understanding it's a sort of sticky issue on both sides, but what could we do, what could we suggest, so.
Did a Two Rivers person come?
No. Oh, well, no, that's not true, he did, but he came for something else and left,
Oh,
came for the mapping, which is that stuff.
and Mariah, we're not getting a Two Rivers person tonight.
No. For the cell tower?
Yeah.
No.
I did have a communication with Kevin Geiger and he said only if they're asked, which they were asked. I don't quite understand.
They said that they had, in some of that correspondence I went back and looked at, their position was that they had reviewed the correspondence and they didn't have any problem with what they had seen. And they didn't have a position or see a reason for them to be involved at this point. That's what I had heard, so. Be that as it may.
Pardon me. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, so, but in a conversation I did have with Two Rivers, this is a quote. Our main actually, this is from an email. Our main concerns are looking at the plants center around the road, the power line, tree cutting, wetland and stormwater impacts of the road, the installation of power and better access, effectively creating a likely subdivision in the usual visual impacts. So those are the things he said he was concerned about after seeing the advance notice.
So, what I'd said to you in the email was just that we're in this 60-day advance notice period. I don't think Vertex has submitted a request for the certificate of public good yet. They sort of said, we thought they were gonna submit it actually today by June 10th. And then, in that meeting, the representative from Vertex said kind of by end of June, July, he kind of pushed the date out a little further, so. Once they do submit that certificate of public good, there is a review period. And the Public Utilities Commission has to decide within like 60 days how they're gonna respond. And I think Mr. Parisi from Vertex was pretty clear, like they would like us to be on board with it, but they don't need anyone's approval to move forward, so. So during that period of 60 days where the Public Utilities Commission is sort of deciding whether or not to grant this. And I think that's almost like a bit of a done deal, like they probably will grant it, but they are obligated to consider any comments and recommendations that get submitted to them. And they have to respond in writing. So that's kind of the facts on the ground. So based on all that, we were, as a planning commission, our recommendation to the select board is that the following steps are taken. That town residents are informed directly when the public comment period begins. So this would allow people with objections, concerns to get on that website, post anything. It's open to everybody. It doesn't have to come from. And then that would mean that Vertex would have to respond.
Amy, so are we? Are these, it's only during the review period that sort of concerns or issues raised will be noted, like right now, if these same concerns or issues were brought up, there's, the PUC doesn't look at them,
That's my understanding.
okay.
So that the certificate of public good has to be filed to sort of trigger that review.
The
period.
intake of concerns
So
parties.
this conversation we're having now, like we could send it directly to Vertex, but there is not really gonna.
So it's sort of,
They're not-
it's the notice period, like this is what we plan to do right now, okay.
So the second thing is that we would recommend that the select board request details about the coverage. We don't have those details, like 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bar, how far out, like what. And related to that, like what roads have the coverage, how far up and down the roads is their coverage? Will this one tower provide coverage for all of Tunbridge and North Tunbridge? Like, what are we getting? And if it doesn't, how many towers does Vertex envision would have to be built out to cover the town of Tunbridge? Not saying we want that, but you know, what are we getting for this? Third, people are very concerned about the height. Could this height be reduced at all? 10 feet, 20 feet, 150 feet, and what does each increment of reduction in height, what does that do? Does that?
Well, connected to your previous two
I
questions.
was
too.
gonna
Exactly.
say,
What do we lose?
is that high to reach everything or what?
And that's not
West
clear.
Tunbridge may get nothing with. No matter how tight.
Once again, we got a brush cut, so.
So, and this was just an example, this is not equivalent to Tunbridge, but they did a project, Vertex did in Hampton, New Hampshire, that's the, you know, Hampton Beach, down at the beach. And
It's like West Tunbridge.
they brought in somebody called a radio frequency expert, I didn't know that was a thing, but that's a thing.
Yeah, it's
That's a thing.
he could do it.
And based on that person's recommendation, they did lower the height of the tower. Pretty significantly, like 40 feet, I think, 56 to say 1.
No, 46. You're right.
Yeah, and
Different topography certainly there.
absolutely, and so it's not analogous that way, but the point is just, there's such an expert exists that one could ask for expert opinion. And also that, you know, they did respond with action item, they reduced the height of the tower, so it's possible, that's all I'm saying there.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the last thing was something John, you and I talked about, which was requesting information from Vertex about a decommissioning bond. So I looked around a little, and apparently as part of the permitting process, Vertex is required to provide this, and that he brought that up in the meeting, but didn't elaborate on that. And then that this would cover costs related to dismantling the tower if
They can win, yeah.
it went, it's a zombie apocalypse and.
Right.
I don't know. So,
So given how technology ages out so
well,
quickly.
exactly.
This might be 20 years, it might be later. So,
So I also brought some information about how the decommissioning process, the bond process works, like a step by step. So I just brought it to like, you know, some fun light reading. So if you, you know, just some context for how, like the steps that would have to happen if legal process. They provide it. And then, so that's kind of. The recommendations that we kind of came to. At the planning commission level, I did have one final note, which really wasn't from the planning commission, which is kind of a question I had, which is, apparently landowners leasing their property to companies for cell towers, often include a removal clause in their own lease agreement,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's something that was put in these particular lease, if that's something. It's overreach to request the landowner. Consider that, I don't know, and maybe this bond decommissioning takes care of that.
It seems to get light.
Another way to.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at different ways to be all be effective, it seems. Fairly inevitable that this will happen, so I think it's a matter of kind of. Slowing it down, allowing people to think about it, ask questions,
But also get things like,
get the information.
well, get the information, but also if that's possible, to get a decommissioning fund or whatever, or promise. Then,
Give it.
yeah, because they may not offer it. Yeah,
He did say that was possible, I thought in the meeting, did you
Yeah.
remember? Yeah.
It sounds like one of those things where if the municipality didn't ask for it,
Yeah,
they won't do it.
yeah.
But if they,
Available
Legally, if they're requested, they have to do it.
so there was these little tiny things. Or the things we're trying to make sure we ask the questions before. I don't know, maybe even before the 60-day period, maybe these are questions that can be asked in text before that period. Or during, I'm not sure of the time,
Yeah.
but.
And then I guess have questions for either Two Rivers or the league or somebody of. Are there ways to slow down the due diligence process just so we don't sort of get blindsided and say, oh, like, say this decommissioning, then come up and find out after, if there are things like that, but. Should bring up, like, is it 60 days or is it gonna be 6 months? I don't.
Well, I think I read somewhere, it has to be 60 days or no more than like. I remember
180.
I was gonna say 180 days, yeah, so it could. You know, if people have questions and we can raise some of these issues and it could just prolong the period a little bit.
Right.
I don't see it ultimately stopping it, but. Who knows what concessions we can get from them, if fun, if they can reduce the height, there's some things that maybe.
Right.
We can. Work on.
Yeah.
So. I think I emailed this to everybody and especially if you have if you want planning commission to do certain things, you can ask her. This is just kind of where we are right now.
There was Abby Folk. Forwarded that ordinance.
Yes, yeah, from Peachum.
Have you talked as a planning commission about that, whether we should do it or?
She was at the meeting, the planning commission meeting, and she mentioned it and then circulated it, and I took a quick look at it, but we haven't really even addressed it in any way. But I thought that was.
The thought,
I looked at it,
You did.
it pretty much says you can't do a thing.
without the town's approval.
Yeah, it sounded like even then, and they obviously didn't want cows in their town.
Yeah.
It's written so it's not to happen.
I got some zoning though, too.
A lot of it,
Yeah,
I didn't
so-
know whether they had service across the river, so they could have that luxury of saying,
Right.
you don't want anything.
Yeah.
I mean. Yeah, a lot of these projects are analogous either because of topography or because of their own zoning that we don't. We could suddenly
No.
decide to create some zoning, but that's
Yeah.
not really. Ultimately, that's not what we wanted to do. so.
Right. Well, I think if we have some sort of ordinance, it ought to be just an ordinance, because we want an ordinance, not because we want to fight this one issue.
Correct. And it's not clear that. That would. Really give us any protection.
Right.
Anyway, because the,
It takes a while to get an ordinance done properly anyway. By the time we get it done, it might be too late, so.
Probably can't do one reaction rate to
Yeah.
something either.
Right.
Future ones.
It could be in the hospital.
I wonder, would the planning commission be interested in if we could get, you know, Kevin Geiger and a rep from Vertex here for our next select board meeting? Would it make sense if we had questions that we sent them in advance? So, you know, like there are a lot of questions still from the Vertex guy. I'm sure he won't get back to us unless we ask, you know, speak to the fire and say, yeah, what is the coverage from this, or how many towers do you foresee in Tunbridge for complete coverage? If there's some questions that maybe in a more formal setting, they've answered.
Well, and some of this was, I just procedurally, I'm not sure if that comes from you or if you say to us, we do it, and like, he would respond to me if I emailed him.
Right.
That's where I'm kind of like, I'm not quite sure where to go with this yet. And I think he would need to email these questions and then ask maybe to come back to a meeting or respond, because he came to this formal meeting with a presentation that he's given to many towns
Yeah.
and didn't have the information. Just
Huh.
didn't think that we would want that level of detail, I believe is what he said. You know, I wouldn't want to just have him show up and then have the same, like,
Right.
oh, I have
exactly.
no
That's
idea,
exactly
yeah.
the questions I had.
Yeah. So is that something you would like us to do? I mean, I can certainly
Yeah.
email him and say, hey, I went to this meeting,
That'd be great.
okay.
Yeah.
And this kind of was, this,
Yeah.
what I've outlined
Oh,
here
that's good.
works.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how do you propose that we let the public know about this issue? Because that was one of your recommendations. You just put it out everywhere and.
I think so, I'm not good. So, once we're in this period, we're this open period where there's, this notice period.
Yeah.
I just don't know, I think I need to get information from them about, like, where do you go to posting, is it on the PUC website, but like, how do you do this? So I want to, I don't actually know the nitty gritty of it, but then I would really hope it could be like, I don't know, much more on the website, on the, you know, maybe part of the select board agenda. I don't know, but I just feel like, I know one of the problems for people is that they felt very much like this came out of nowhere, and it didn't because it was in the public domain, it just wasn't in your day-to-day life, like you wouldn't have run across this unless you went and looked for it. But I would, you know, like going forward, at least now that we know a little bit, just to make sure people have an opportunity to comment or ask questions. However you guys think is the best way to get the information out.
Well, John said there were 40 people plus or minus at the meeting. It'd be nice to have at least 400 or 800 know about it.
We
Somehow.
had quite a crowd at the planning commission. Oh, yeah, like 18. Something.
Yeah.
Including.
But nobody from Vertex.
He won't come back unless. I think in his mind, that box is checked. If we ask him specifically, he did say he would be willing to come back.
I think the obligation is only in that 60-day advance notice time. That's what generally when
He would respond.
municipalities need, or butters possibly request of the people.
Dude, he's not.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the 30-day comment period, which it could be in as soon as tomorrow, he's obligated to be during that.
So one question is about the timing of contacting him, whether it should be now in advance of that 60-day period.
Oh,
Or,
I mean, a 30-day comment.
I'm sorry, we're in the 60-day advance notice period and then it's a 30-day comment period. So the question is, you know, is it worth emailing him now or would he respond with email him now? I don't think it matters.
Amy had suggested at the planning commission meeting that another public meeting happened, not necessarily with Vertex, but I don't know if you're still planning on something like that. And that, because if we have 30 days, it's just not everybody made it to that other public meeting, and it might be more of a discussion format rather than. He spoke for a long time, somebody needed a cane, I think, for him, part of the town, but. I mean, it would be great if there was another public meeting.
I'm certainly open to that. I think the most important thing though is to spread the word and get people to comment, which forces a response. So if, I mean, we can talk about having another meeting, that might be a way to. Yeah,
I mean, it may be that people who are giving the comments aren't seeing the other people's comments. So it's not much of a discussion.
And can the planning commission submit comments?
yeah.
Okay.
Anyone can.
Yeah.
Like as a commission, as a select board or just a person, yeah. Absolutely.
So if a whole bunch of people came to the meeting and you got a whole bunch of comments from these individual people, you could submit them as a planning commission instead of the people themselves, or the people could submit it as well, so it just
I think
a lot of questions.
both, and probably like the more, the better,
Right,
coming from, you know.
every angle, yeah.
If I could jump in real quick.
Sure.
I think a couple things. One is I only read through the stuff on the process a little bit, but my understanding is the same as Michael's, which is that the only obligation Vertex has is to do a hearing during this advance notice period, which they did, and that period, I believe, ends today. So there's no harm in asking him if he'll come in, but I don't think they have any obligation to. At this point, the only people who are listening to anything we have to say is going to be the Public Utilities Commission. Vertex isn't going to listen. They're not going to care. They're just going to move ahead. So really everything has to go to them, to the Public Utilities Commission. And I'm pretty sure that I remember reading that of particular interest to them were planning commissions and select boards. So I think to whatever extent we can consolidate feedback coming from either or both entities, that would have the most impact. The other thing is that I think we need to pay very careful attention to the timing, because they are allowed to file the whatever it is, certificate for public good or whatever it is, as early as tomorrow. I would expect that they will file it tomorrow, and the 30-day clock will start immediately. And I mean, their practice at doing this, they do it all the time. They know every trick, and I think getting this stuff filed as fast as possible so that people don't have time and don't notice is probably exactly what they're going to do. The fact that we didn't even have a public hearing on this until what the last week of the notice period just kind of shows how easy it is for this stuff to get missed. Speaking of which, they supposedly notified both the planning commission and the select board. Did you guys get those notices?
That would have been on April 11th.
I saw that they had said they notified us.
I don't remember.
I didn't get an email. I'm wondering if they just sent like a letter to the town offices or something.
Probably a registered letter or by mail. I mean, they claim that they are required to notify certain
Yeah.
people, and the planning commission and the select board are among them. And if you guys never got that, then well, I don't know what you want to do with it, but it's something to consider.
Nothing. I mean, I certainly got nothing in my
That's
phone. I did look back, but. I mean, we saw.
Right, probably.
Mariah, are you there?
I just walked back,
There you go.
We
so
were
I
just-
missed what you were saying. I just got back.
Peter Hayden was wondering if the Tunbridge Select Board or the Planning Commission got a registered letter from Vertex. And
We
now-
just got, yeah, we got like the map, like the big thick design plans, and we got the letter just stating that this was going on, and I think it was the same thing that they had sent to all the abutters.
And that was back in the beginning of April.
It wasn't very long ago. I don't think it was the beginning of April. I think it was, I mean, it could be. Time is flying. So I can check my records and see exactly when it was that I received it.
It would have been April 11th.
Given the time.
Sorry, what was that?
It would have been April 11th, because then they had 60 days.
Yeah, then that sounds probably correct. I mean, I received something within the correct time period, so I'm not sure exactly what day, but I can look back and see exactly what day it was.
Peter, do you know what obligation Vertex has, or even the PUC, if to respond to certain questions, like if we request decommissioning bond, does Vertex have to get in touch with us, and assure us they'll do that, or does the PUC hold Vertex's feet to the fire to do that?
Yeah, I would, my take, and I'm far from an expert in this, I mean, I just looked through the stuff when all this was starting, but I think at this point, again, the only people who are listening and have any obligation to listen is the Public Utility Commission. So I don't think asking anything of Vertex other than maybe information, which maybe they'll give us, but I don't think asking them for anything is gonna hold any water or be binding in any way. So if one of the things we want is a decommissioning bond, then I think that needs to be specifically spelled out in a comment to the Public Utility Commission.
And some of these technical questions then that only Vertex would have the answer to, we have to hope that the PUC would ask Vertex for details.
Well, no, I think we could ask the PUC. I mean, I think one of the things that they're required to do in their whole application, including the advance notice, the whole plan, is to take into consideration the town plan. And from what I can tell, the town plan, as Amy pointed out at the last meeting, the town plan on the one hand says we want better cell service, but on the other hand, it says we want to mitigate the impact of towers, and it lists a bunch of ways that should be considered to do that. From what I could tell in the application that Vertex put together, the only part of the plan they listened to was the part that we want better cell service, and they ignored absolutely everything else. And so, to me, that would be a good comment to the Public Utility Commission that despite the requirement that they take the plan into consideration, they don't seem to have done it at all. So there was no proposal to limit the tower height, for example. That's explicitly called out in the plan. In fact, this tower is 175 feet, where all the towers around us down in Royalton and Sharon, and they're all 120 to 150 feet. So not only is this one not limited in its size, it's much bigger than anything around. And they made no effort or proposals to camouflage or the various other things that are listed, and they made no, all they did was hand wave about considering other sites, and this is and how they arrived at the site that they chose. So I don't think they've demonstrated that they took any of that into consideration.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, so, I want to continue about the height of the tower. 176 feet, it's 110 or so feet above the tree line per Vertex's measurements and their drawings. And, you know, we would really like to see, yeah, a shorter tower. 120 feet would mean that it's half below and half above the height of the trees, and that, I mean, seems more reasonable, especially if you consider the town plan, where it does mention of this very thing about the height of towers. It's very specific about it. And the word must is in there as well. So, you must consider it. So that, and certainly it could be that this first tower, they just want to spray as much as they can. But if in fact, I mean, I think we're entitled to know a grand plan. I don't know if we can insist on that. But if the only way to get other coverage is other towers, then this seems like overkill. It's out of scale, it's overkill, and they're just gonna spray it and then maybe see where they need to fill in, rather than if they're gonna do another tower anyway, why don't they just, you know, scientifically figure out heights of towers and placement and that kind of thing, to have a plan, because it's a little unfair to the town, I think, to have these things spring up just helter skelter. That's,
Do you surmise that maybe if they're asking for 176 feet, they really don't need that, and
well,
just like always, they'll say, okay, well, we'll cut it back to 120, we'll be good.
I think, from what I've, you know, the research I've done about other towers and stuff, and the distance, this road is over a third of a mile. It's gonna be a 15-foot wide road and a bridge that they have to construct. So, and John tried to get a ballpark estimate for what this might cost, and he didn't answer twice about it. So it could be that, that they need that height in order to make it viable for them. And because they rent there in turn, leasing it out to 2 or 3 other carriers. And Verizon doesn't own this. It's Vertex that owns it and controls the tower. It's not Verizon. Verizon is a client for it. So in that case, so, you know, if reducing the tower means they don't have as much incomes, so be it. So, you know, I mean, that may have to be a compromise, that I would like to see happen. If this, you know, because the town plan is pretty clear and they've pretty much ignored it. He admitted at the meeting that he did not read the town plan or the regional plan. And and also said that, and he said he's been working on it for 2 years, and hasn't read the town plan. It's not that big of a plan.
Right.
Anyway, I think that there was and he didn't know about town government at all, actually. That was surprising.
I think he's basically the classic corporate chew toy, where he's the guy you send in, you let everybody in town chew on him for a while, take out their frustration, and he's great at dodging questions and not providing any real information, and then he goes away.
Yeah.
That's called carpetbagging, I think it's.
Yeah.
Well,
The other thing is that I think in terms of the tower height, I think that's you know, that's good for Vertex. The taller the tower, the better coverage they'll get, which, you know, maybe is good for us too. But it also means the more slots they have on the tower to lease out to different people, which makes them more money. And the whole question of coverage and the tower height, I'd turn that around and ask them to justify why the tower should be higher than other towers in the area, say 120 feet, and you know, does it provide better coverage? If so, how much better? You know, make them justify it.
I would think there'd be, you know, they're a lot of what their rep said was sort of data driven too, and so I would think they would have metrics on that 175, this much of the town is covered. If it's 150, this much of the town, and we never got to see those maps.
Yeah, I mean, what's surprising to me though is that, I mean, this isn't a big town. How are they gonna pay for this? Like, is it a 500-year payback plan or something? It's really not, it seems out of scale, I guess, is my point.
Well, they're probably trying to get, you know, cover as much as they can with one tower, so they don't have to put in too many more.
So, but just procedurally, all these questions that we need answers to with the details. I can, certainly email Fran Parisi in advance to see if he responds, but I think to what your point is, Peter, you know, we want to post all those questions on the PUC,
Yeah.
and then he's obligated to respond in a public way, so we can do both, I guess, to force the response.
Right.
And maybe get a conversation going about the height,
Right,
right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
absolutely.
I think as the joint planning commission and select board, we could issue our own, here's our list of questions to the PUC, right?
Right,
And what about the bond? Is that something we would go to Fran in advance, or is that something? I mean, that comes from Vertex, that was my
He
understanding.
seemed open to it. Decommissioning.
Yeah,
Yeah, he seemed open, but it sounded like we have to.
Because he's obligated, we have to bring it up, so.
definitely, yeah, okay. Yes, Brenda.
I just wanted to, you know, one of the things that might trigger this a little bit is the fire emergency services complaining for years about the lack of cell service, especially on the fairgrounds, and we have a lot of stuff, and I don't know whether that gets the attention of the state. They keep trying to help us out periodically, and nothing really works. Verizon says, oh, we got you covered, right? You know, we cover the whole town, and everybody knows they don't.
Does this one work then for the fair?
It didn't, when we first put it in, it helped a lot. It was like $400,000 appliance up there. And then they increased the amount of usage down there with card machines and everything else. So if we get an event, you know, we're shut down. It'll shut the system down. They still are. In fact, Simon and I put up some test additional antennas last year, and I think I talked to you guys, we talked about renting this machine they call a cow, but we didn't realize it was $8,000. You know, it kind of caught us back, and it's a problem for us, because if I've got a two-way radio, you know, how many people can all talk to each other on a larger event? You know, we can't either. We'll end up using runs, and the cell phones we use on the side, but we won't be able to on something like that. It'll just crash it. And the school is marginal. North Tunbridge is marginal. Orange County Parent Child Center is 0. So we've been pointing, we might have triggered some of this. The state is empathetic, you know, sympathetic to us. When we keep bringing it up, we don't.
But isn't it true, RF, I mean, your handheld stuff couldn't be located on that tower, because it interferes.
He said something about that could be worked out. I don't know what that means.
I sat down with Frank Duffy, and he said that they're not patented, but. And I thought Simon said something about that in the public meeting too, that it.
Simon wasn't sure, and so we were curious, and Simon, at the end of that, we felt like, well, if the one at K's ever has an issue in the future, you know, this guy sounded like it could be worked out. So plan B would be, we could go to this cell tower
Well,
and see about putting it on.
Some more research on
And
it.
we talked a little bit on Monday. I talked to that guy, and he said the amount of power that's coming out of the cell tower is very low. You know, I mean, it's the same amount of power, believe it or not, as our repeater that we have at K's.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is all the more reason to get details about the coverage, because everybody wants to know, including emergency management services. Emergency services need to know what we're getting.
They did show us a map, and I was staring at it intently because I knew I could see the balloon from down in the fairgrounds. I ran right down there. That's what I wanted to see. Like, whoa, yeah, that's good anyways. I could see it real clear from my house. But it doesn't look like it's gonna do a lot for North Tunbridge. So it's gonna be, you know, they're gonna need more than one in town. They always said, that's why we have a problem with radios, even with the fire department. We're a hilly valley. People will never be able to talk to your side.
That was just slightly. That was just where you could see the tower from. That doesn't tell us, do you get 1 bar, 2 bars, so you get, are we 5G or for whatever it is, 4G there? Or is it just sort of like a little dot in the distance and we get?
He said mostly it's basically we're working line of sight. So if you could see the balloon, like, I don't have. If I walk around, I can get one bar, if I walk around my property, it's really limited, with that, it looks like I'd probably get full service. Not that I care, I'm kinda used to living in the dark ages, so I'm actually quite content where I am.
That might be a question that kind of comes both ways, that say, if safety is one of the pluses to this,
Mm.
then tower location, is there a tower location in town, but either the one they picked or potentially another one, where the school, OCPCC, the fairgrounds would all be covered? Would be interesting.
With one tower, if they could even
Yeah.
do it, and I'm sure for their money, I'm sure they probably looked at that. He said he approached quite a few people where their engineers had looked at it, but you know, it doesn't hurt to prod him again.
Yeah.
I'm sure like with a 2,000-foot tower, we all have amazing coverage.
Yeah.
You know,
But,
not sure,
Amy, go ahead.
we don't want it
It
to,
would dwarf the Tunbridge Fair as an attraction.
that's right. We can have tours.
Yeah.
The tourist attraction,
Yeah.
come see our little famous town.
Well, I think the point is, we want these details for a variety of reasons,
Right.
and we wanna force them to provide the, I mean,
Right.
Yes,
if for no other reason than it was annoying, they didn't give it
right.
to us, at, you know, at that meeting. So it's very hard, even if we can't like fully put a stop, or, you know, should put a stop, we need to slow things down so we fully understand what.
But we also might be able to bargain with them, maybe the decommissioning thing would, maybe it's a given, but we need to ask for it,
Exactly.
maybe it'll shorten the tower by 50 feet, or who knows?
Mhm.
But you don't know until you ask.
Okay, well, I will email Fran, probably loop in all of you, and I'll ask all these questions,
Mhm.
and then I guess the PUC website to want to see like if they're filing, or, you know.
Yeah.
Figure that out.
Well, I
Look
think
around.
the town's gonna be notified when the
When it's filed.
application hits.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Okay,
And because you guys are party to, really the
Right.
only ones. Now, the public in the next 30 days can intervene, as it's called. But you guys, everything, I think, the way it looks is everything goes through you. And ultimately the select. board.
Yes, Sierra's feeling it. Yep.
all right, thank you, Amy.
Thank you all.
You know, we have to have a special meeting. It's just so we get on the same page and get our questions up.
Yeah, and the time to manage, yeah.
I think, yeah.
Because I'm sure they use that to their advantage.
Right. Yeah, we're not gonna meet for another 2
Municipal
weeks.
volunteer.
Well, I'm gonna jump on this tomorrow with Fran, and then I'll let you know.
Yeah.
what-
Yeah.
what we think.
All right,
Thank you, guys.
thank you. Okay,
I know I have a presentation for this.
Is that a problem with us?
I don't know. That's the ID guy.
Just telling us we need to just
That's
think
very.
about some updates, we're fine.
Thank you. Okay.
If there's some updates it wants us to install, but we're not gonna do that right now.
Maybe you skip that one.
Actually, next on the agenda there's a David Gabriel here,
That's me.
and he wants to ask us about.
No, we have to do the VHB.
Oh, okay.
Sierra Ford from VHB.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Area.
Well,
Maybe his opinion is different.
yeah. All right, so we'll invite Sierra Ford. The scoping update. If she's there,
Sierra, a Chevy truck.
there she is.
Hi, everyone. I am here. Sorry about that. Just getting set up here. All right. I hope I have permission to share my screen.
I made you a co-host. You should have the availability to share your
Okay.
screen now.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so my name is Sierra Ford. I'm from VHB, and I'm here to present on the Emergency Management Corridor Vulnerability Scoping Study that we did on behalf of the town. So there was a lot of coordination with a bunch of different people from the town, and on VHB's end, it was me and Joe was our water resources engineer, really focused on this project. Brief agenda for tonight. I already introduced myself. Going to circle back on the project purpose and need from the beginning of the project that some of you might remember. I'm going to review the scope and the schedule of the whole project, give an overview then of all of the selected project sites and our designs for them, and then go over that FEMA benefit cost analysis that we submitted and then open it up to discussion. So the purpose of the project that we were working on was to really look at the emergency management corridor of Tunbridge, which includes Route 110 and a few of the adjoining roadways. We wanted to identify vulnerable areas along the corridor and propose solutions that would yield a benefit cost ratio greater than 1. The project is truly necessary to make sure that we maintain access for emergency vehicles, all of the emergency services in the event of various disasters. So the project kicked back off in October of 2024. We started off by discussing with the town, reviewing existing conditions, reviewing all the available tools online that are focused on resiliency and flooding and other concerns. We held a local concerns meeting to try to pinpoint what sites we wanted to focus on the emergency management corridor. We performed some hydrology and hydraulics analyses of all of the sites that we were considering. And then we produced a site vulnerability memo after we assessed all of them and their risks. We then had a select board meeting to talk about our selected sites back in January of this year. And then from there, they helped, the town helped refine which sites we were looking at. And we developed some conceptual graphics and cost estimates that were used for submitting a benefit cost analysis through FEMA. So right now we just finished up the draft scoping report I'm presenting to you now, and based on any feedback we get from the town and any stakeholders, we will be turning around a final scoping report to complete the project. So to kind of circle back on how we selected the sites in the beginning, we reviewed a bunch of different data sets available online. The state does a really good job at tracking different damages and different resiliency tools. Based on that, reviewing natural resource data, FEMA flood maps, other student geomorphic assessments, and performing site visits, we were able to use all that knowledge and then have pretty thorough conversations with different town officials on what sites we really should focus on for improving. We ended up looking at 4 different sites, and here's a map showing all of them. So we had 2 sites along Spring Road that involved some slope failures. We have a project that we're looking at along Recreation Road, where the town garage is located. And then we have a culvert that we're looking to replace on Stratford Road. So I'm going to dive into the sites. So first we have that first site on Spring Road. To go over the relation to the emergency corridor, if Spring Road are out, then likely Vermont 110 is various parts of 110 are out, which means that the detour would not only be what I'm showing on the screen here, but it would end up being detoured much farther around that because 110 would be closed in certain areas as well. This is a pretty key connection to connect Tunbridge over to Randolph. So to go over some existing conditions of that first slide site. So there is a perched 15-inch pipe that is going out onto the slope, and it's a very, very steep slope. There's been some history of repairs at the site. It's within a mapped river corridor, and that pipe and the hydraulics do not meet standards. So our solution here was to upsize the culvert, install some head walls to ensure stability, and then stabilize the slope. Here's our presented, or the conceptual plan that we presented and put forward in the draft scoping report. So you can see that culvert is being replaced. We're doing a little bit of ditch work on the upstream end of the culvert, installing that head wall, and then stabilizing that downstream end of the culvert to make sure that no more washouts occur. And then this pipe will also be properly sized. Moving on to the second site on Spring Road. This site is another slope failure. You can see in the top image on the left there that the guardrail even is slumping. So definitely some history of damages and history of past past repairs that were done as well. So this is an existing 18-inch pipe. It does actually meet hydraulic standards. So we are just going to replace the pipe as another 18-inch because it is a suitable size, but we are going to install head walls and do pretty extensive slope stabilization and repairs is what we have proposed. So here's a graphic showing our conceptual design for that second slide site. You can see some upstream end ditch work and stabilizing, that replaced culvert, new head walls, and then we have extensive slope repair work done. What we showed here is conceptual. It's not based on any geotechnical investigation. If this is pursued into further design, further geotech work would need to be done in order to really figure out what the proper solution is here. But we have seen similar instances in the past of slope failures that are along the same lines, do the same issues. So we presented something that we have experience with. Moving on to the third project site, we have the culvert that exists under Stratford Road. To go into a little more detail on some emergency corridor impacts. So if just Stratford Road culvert gets overtopped or washes out and there's an issue there, there's going to be a detour that's going to be needed. Emergency services are going to have to route around that, but it is very unlikely that the Stratford Road culvert will be overtopped or damage Stratford Road and cause Stratford Road to be impassable if Vermont 110 is still passable. Pretty unlikely that a storm event will hit Stratford Road and not hit 110. So we're talking a major detour in the case that Stratford Road gets overtopped because various parts of 110 would also be impassable. And Stratford Road is a very key connection to connecting Tunbridge to other towns. The town garage is off of Stratford Road. And it's really heavily relied on for emergency service vehicles. It's one of the main roads that they can actually travel on. So to review some of those existing conditions, we have a 4-foot culvert in existing, and we found that it partially meets hydraulic standards. So ideally here, we will install a structure that meets the full bankful width of the stream. And that ended up being a concrete box culvert that we are presenting forward. And that will satisfy the hydraulic standards that are projected. So here's a graphic showing the proposed box culvert. You can see the existing stream alignment. It's slightly off. That's just some line work from the GIS software that's being used. But we have the existing culvert being removed and installing a precast concrete box culvert that is 6 feet by 9 feet. And that will extend past the toes of slopes on the sides of Stratford Road. And then we have some slight stabilization of the channel inlet and outlet to be able to make sure that that water is passing through properly. Our final site here is Recreation Road in general. We were looking at the entirety of Recreation Road. This is an image showing the velocity gradient in the White River, the first branch of the White River at Recreation Road in the 100-year storm. You can see here on the graph on the left, Recreation Road is completely underwater. So we looked at various options at this road. we looked at relocating it in its entirety. There's that new bridge that was built on one end of Recreation Road near the baseball field that we really didn't want to end up relocating. So our solution ended up being a partial relocation of the road along closer to the town garage. So you can see the relocated road is in the brown here. That existing road follows closer to the edge of the river. And then really restoring that stream buffer by revegetating it, adding proper plantings to make sure that we can still maintain access to the town garage. And then at the other end of Recreation Road near the baseball field, in order to avoid having to relocate the road, we're just going to do some heavy shoreline armoring with some pretty hefty stone fill.
Frank's already working on that.
So moving into the FEMA benefits cost analysis that we submitted back in April, at the end of April. A summary of the project costs, we have broken that down further, and all of the different cost breakouts are in our scoping report, but obviously Recreation Road is the most expensive, Stratford Road being the next expensive because it is a pretty long precast box culvert, and then we have some of the culvert replacements and slope stabilization efforts that put Spring Road down there. So we have about $1.5 million in just project costs that we came up with for these solutions. And then using the FEMA benefit cost analysis software tools, we were able to also summarize the benefits that were associated with each of these sites. We lumped all of these sites together into one project. That's how we coordinated with the VEM on how to go forward with submitting a BCA through FEMA and what the way they would look at reviewing it would be. So we came up with a pretty good amount of mitigation benefits from performing these projects, and those benefits included an economic assessment of the detours that'd be required if these roads are washed out, that impact on the emergency services and just the residents living in the area and any commuters. And then it also took into account the operating budget of the town garage, because once Recreation Road isn't accessible, the town garage becomes inaccessible. And then we also looked at the decrease in expected damages after the project was there. So, upsizing culverts means that there's going to be less of a chance that it's going to take a bigger storm for those culverts to wash out and the roadways to wash out. And then we also had some ecosystem benefits that we could account for based on the riparian buffer improvements in the Recreation Road, where we are restoring that stream buffer. And that's really all I had. So I can open it up to any initial questions. And this is a very brief overview. We do have that draft scoping report, which is many, many pages and goes into a lot more detail on the things that I'm discussing now.
Questions?
Did we were the ones who picked the final four? I remember there were a couple other sites, right?
Yes. Yeah, because they had originally suggested one site on 110 in
Yeah,
place of
there,
one
yeah.
of the other sites, and we chose to do the 4 sites that we were ultimately would be responsible for fixing, so that we would have this information to go after grants if we needed to.
Yep.
Okay.
We would not be responsible for 110.
I get it, right.
And that's
Right.
what, I have a question. This was done when there was state ARPA funds. Please, everybody, it's not what the town is hoarding. ARPA funds. But do you know if there's state ARPA funds are still available? Because the brick took us a while to get done here.
I think ARPA funds usually get distributed to the towns, and then they can kind of use them how they want. So if you already have ARPA funds, you should be able to still use them, because a lot of times the towns put them right into their own budgets. But I don't know if there's more to
Yeah,
gain.
Yeah,
it sounds like you don't know about it. That's okay. We already got the ones that got distributed, but there was a state pot of money that we were first addressing.
yeah, so we applied for this through the BRIC grant, and this was the BRIC scoping grant, and the intention of that was to use the BRIC scoping grant, which requires the BCA to be able to then apply for the brick full implementation grant. The brick full implementation grant is one of the grants that was canceled by the current administration, so there is no brick implementation grant that we can go after. Would have been, the application would have been due this November. But having this information still allows us to go after other grants. So but we probably would not be able to go after a single grant. We would go after individual grants based on what we decide of these 4 sites is the next one we want to tackle. And then we would use the information in the scoping grant to go after the money for site 1 on Stratford Road or whatever.
Because this would probably be required anyways for all of them, so at least we got it done while there was still a brick grant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
And where was that funding from originally? Was it a FEMA thing or was it something else?
No, it was through the. It was the subset of the hazard mitigation, but it was not the HMGP, which we typically for through Stratford Road. I have to pull it up in a minute. But Sierra, while I'm pulling this up, the one thing I did note on the cost estimates document that you sent us, that's a separate, it's the single PDF. That I was using to try to pull apart for various grants. The sites, there's 4 pages, but each site doesn't seem to be labeled, or else I just can't see it. So if you could redo that, being very clear, like Stratford Road, Spring Road Site 1, Spring Road Site 2, because I didn't actually know which ones went to what until you just showed the summary slide that had the 700,000, the 200, and then I just mashed them up on my computer here. But if that document could have them labeled on each page.
Are you talking about the FEMA benefit cost analysis document or the cost estimates where the costs are, the actual project costs are broken down?
Yeah, the actual project cost, it's called
Okay.
estimates.pdf.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely clean that up for you.
So next step will be to finalize the draft.
They will send us the final scoping document, and then you all will have to do the same thing we did last week with, or like 2 weeks ago with the sidewalk scoping. You will have to sign acceptance of the final document, and then I can submit for the final reimbursement. This was a Department of Homeland Security funding opportunity.
Yeah.
The Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant.
They had to come to the state, new states.
Right.
So I guess in terms of next steps on my end, yes, Marion was right that we're going to finalize that report. I would like to take any other feedback into consideration. So if that report was circulated, it'd be great to have any comments back by end of next week, we can say, if you all want to take time to look through any of that. I'd be happy to incorporate any feedback.
That report was emailed to you all a couple of weeks ago and to the planning commission for distribution.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Sierra.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too.
You too.
Make any motion.
Oh, not bad.
So Mariah, for the next meeting, can you put on an action item to accept the final report for the brick grant? And that'll allow me to do the final reimbursement submission. Thanks.
He says yes.
What funds are outstanding? Is that administrative?
No, it's just like the next round, so it's all, this one is a quarterly submission, so it would be the last quarter's worth of funding. Trying to remember, I think the whole thing was only 75,000. And I've been submitting every quarter, so it'll probably only be another round of like 10 or 15,000 that we get reimbursed.
VHB. Yeah,
They will send us that and then I will do the final quarter.
be a wash. Yeah.
Yes,
Well, this will have it, so.
yes.
All right, well, let's move on to David Gabriel.
Thank you, Gary.
Welcome.
Appreciate your coming to this forum. Hopefully it's quicker and easier than the others. Yeah, so the hope is that this body would approve us rehabbing a well, which is on the Drew Road Town Forest lot. It had been previously deeded to our property. It's not been deeded to anywhere else. And it's part of a little cluster of a few wells, and this one is in pretty good shape, but needs some TLC. So there are 3 wells that currently are sort of, you know, taped off a bit and don't have, you know, timber harvesting going on. So we'd like to rehab one of the concrete wells that's on the town forest lot, and which already has pipe run into our property. It's about, I don't know, about 100 or so feet from our property line. And I fund the tile and stone bill for it. Yeah, and other uphill neighbors have lost water in recent summers, probably not this one. So that was the request. And yeah,
It's an old well that mice and everything get in it, and he's gonna put tiles in.
So it's a spring or it was the
spring
Yeah, it's a-
bed,
yeah,
dug
it's
well.
littered with springs up there, and
Yeah.
he's got 3 that go to his property.
with just gravity?
Gravity fed well, yeah, and so hoping to upgrade it and have some sort of insurance
Clean
on water
water.
in future dry summers.
I'm
And
okay
it's
with-
part of the deed to your property.
It is, yeah, it's a single family, and the D language says, yeah, it's deeded well to the property. And this would be sort of a backup well.
That's true with a lot of the houses in town, right? That
Yeah, a lot of them have connections one to the other because they were shallow and they were problematic. I spent many hours up there trying to, they run one out and I have to go up and get suction going from one to the other to the other.
and are the same thing with deeds, just the
Deeds
houses in town that they have access to those.
They have access to the wells, but we're not really sure without doing a lot of pondering through the vault. I think they're vague.
Yeah.
They say they have a deed up there. And they'll say it's on, they don't call it the Drew Forest.
Right, yeah.
Up on the lot. I found 10 wells so far. I don't know where they all go. One goes to his place. Or used to. Dig
it up.
Yeah. Let it blow back up to money.
I mean, that was originally, that lot was started for water
For that
for
reason.
the village.
Yeah. Well, sewage went into the river.
Went downhill.
Yes, exactly.
Connecticut. If you would make a motion, we can,
I make a motion that we let David Gabriel rehab the well in question.
okay,
Second that motion.
all in favor, please say aye.
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 It's unanimous, we can go at it.
Thank you very much, Jerry.
Yep.
At all. Thank you.
Go on a field trip.
I only have like 1 deer in the fridge right now, but if anybody wants to come up, they're more than welcome. 26 Drew Road. Place on the right.
More importantly, we require water for the horses if we run out on our side of it.
There are 8 heifers currently summering on the lower pasture, but they're feeding off the
Some are runaways from my
lower
place.
small lands.
Yes,
Yeah, where do they get their water?
They're getting their water from another brook that comes down from below where the carpenter, between the carpenters and us. And
Whose cows are those?
did you got each of their names? Yeah, point. First spy.
all right,
Hamsters.
let's move on.
Jerseys.
Lieutenant Austin Soul.
Sorry,
Where's?
Oh,
Do something.
oh, yes.
Go to glasses.
Well, I never was in the military.
I hope to be equally brief too, except for opening the floor for some questions, if anyone has anything or comments. So I'm a sergeant out of the Royalton Barracks. I've been up here for a little over a year. I've actually had the pleasure of coming to a couple of tabletops in that time. To work on some things, which has been great. Especially working with multiple communities all together. we've been trying to have a little bit more of a presence in town. Hopefully that can be felt. I can tell you the numbers. So what we did at our barracks is created a chart more or less, trying to track that we're getting to all 22 towns in our area on a somewhat regular basis, to ensure that we're being seen, we're having some impact on public safety with traffic and things like that. Our goal is not to come out and just pester everyone and ruin lives or anything like that. But I can tell you that seems to be working across the board. Specifically for Tunbridge, our arrests, not like calls for response I would go to anyways, like domestic or anything like that, but proactive arrests are, I mean, there's not a lot of them, but there's a lot more than what we had before. And I'll say embarrassingly, from April 2023 to May 1st, 2024, we had one traffic stop in town. Yeah, not great. And we had I think we've at this point from 2024, May 1st, 2025, 22. So still I'd like to see I think reflecting on my troopers and myself, like we can do better than that. But going from one a year to almost a couple a month is certainly better than. And on the flip note of that too, as far as a presence, because we're doing that in Tunbridge and Stratford and things like that, we're driving through town a lot. And trying to at least flag, and then if we can get stops in and make that impact, we can. Right now, a lot of what I want to do in these meetings, because I've been going around to all the towns, is identifying any problem areas, whether that is traffic related, if it's like maybe some problem residents. I'm not aware of anything crazy in Tunbridge, which is a good thing. So we're but we'd be naive to think that they don't pop up, right? Especially we've been, if we follow the news, we've been hitting Bethel pretty hard, and we've actually
The same people in Bethel.
Yeah.
Pretty hard.
Yeah, we're from Tunbridge.
Yes. Maybe it's a good thing though that they're leaving town to do their business. But right, we'd be naive to think that those houses don't pop up in other locations, and there's no like rhyme or reason to it. It's just whatever's available. And so we can't, a lot of times, if we don't receive, like, I'll call them petty, but like the petty calls that give us a little bit of information of like, oh, there's a lot more traffic on my road. I'll be honest, we're probably not going to do a lot with that, but it piles up, and then we are able to build on that. And I just met with Bethel yesterday at their select board meeting, and they're able to see, we shut down like 3 houses in the last 12 months, and like they are shut down. But right, those folks are somewhere because they're not shut. So it can be a long game, which can be frustrating for everyone, more so the community. So, I recognize that, but I ask for some patience and just working with us so we can get to the point of, eliminating any of these problem areas if they pop up. I know, right, I stop a lot of cars that just tend to not want to slow down as they get into town, which is other than some side roads and things like that that have some issues, and right around the fair obviously is pretty busy. And I know you guys had your contract with the sheriff's department too, but is there anything outside of just 110 or all the way through town, as far as like traffic or anything like that can see us maybe try to make an effort on?
I missed the road report early on, but is it just one more day that Drew Road's the bypass?
Yep.
Yeah, so if it's just one more day, I'm not sure there's much of an agenda item on it, but yeah, a lot more traffic on Drew.
That's a separate thing.
Yeah.
Not drug related.
Not drug related, simply traffic related when they're blowing 50 on a blind single lane for, yeah.
Well, and like to touch on that too, even if it ends up being drug related or not, or if it is something along those where there's a some type of bypass for a road closure, we can certainly try to make a point of sitting there at least a little bit, and hopefully that deters people and they realize like, oh, we're watching this. And when it comes to those, problem areas or like an uptick in traffic, knowing when it's happening. So whether you want to call us or do like an anonymous tip online through the Vermont State Police page, we can't be everywhere all the time, but if we know that like from 11 to 2 in the morning, my neighbor's house is, a parking lot, or we're gonna try to focus at that time.
That was sort of my question in terms of who to call. So you said there was a tip line, but also obviously you don't want to call 911 when you just want to get it.
So if you just call our barracks, like, which once again, if you go to like the Vermont State Police website, and it has like the Royalton Barracks phone number. And you can just ask we can generate a case, because that does show, that track record that we're looking for, history at certain residences. And like I said, I'm not gonna stand up here and make promises that when you call and say that this car is, been up and down the road 3 times, we might not be able to get there, because we obviously triage calls, and that might not be the worst thing we're dealing with. But if we're not doing anything, then we'll come out there and see what we can find out. We love, I specifically love using petty things to get my nose into bigger problems. Like one of the houses that we did in Bethel was a warrant for a stolen car key, like the most minor thing, right? But it had a great end result. So like we try to, I work with a phenomenal group of young, motivated troopers. That's why we have had that uptick in traffic stop. And when I say like 22, right, still not a ton of stops, but when my whole patrol area, we were up like almost 2,000 traffic stops. There's 12. So some pretty motivated folks that truly care about public safety. We are out there. We're not out there just to promise you to ruin lives. And honestly, a lot of times too, when we do local enforcement, we do catch a lot of locals speeding, right? That's part of it, unfortunately. But I can guarantee you, I don't work with anyone right now that is out here to completely ruin their life. If anything, we just like to educate. So,
How big an area are you covering those 22 towns? Just give us an idea where.
Yeah, so we 14 all the way up to the Brookfield Williamstown line, and all the way down to Hartford, and then we have Heartland is our most southern, and then we go up to Norwich, which is like the most northern of that. It's kind of like a weird shape, right? And then we go up 89 to the Brookfield Randolph area. Those are both in our, and so then we get all the way out to like Hancock and Granville, and then down to Bridgewater. So that's all in our. It can take us a while to get places. The benefit for
Going east then?
East, yeah, so.
Here, Corinne, Topsom.
So that's St. Johnsbury, it is Berkshire and Topsom, but we stop at Chelsea is our so, and then it's kind of depending on which way you go in Chelsea, you'll either run into the Berlin Barracks or the St. John. But we could have a long response, obviously, given if we're right tonight is what I would deem like a relatively heavy shift for us, and there's 4 of us. So like if we're at something crazy in Bridgewater, might take us a bit to get Tunbridge. I've had to go from when I first came up here, one of my first shifts was from Granville to Stratford. It's not a quick way to do that. So, but that's the nature of the beast. It doesn't matter which area. That's what Vermont policing is. It doesn't have anything to do with us. Our staffing is actually pretty good around there. I know it's been up and down, and honestly, when it was that the previous year with 1 stop, our staffing wasn't great. So like I don't want to come up with excuses, but that's definitely a factor. And right now we have, like I said, a young group of and mixed in with some experience, so it helps. So we're trying to do what we're supposed to be doing, our job description of getting out there, doing what we can for traffic enforcement and regular stuff.
Just quickly, because I was involved with the tabletops, we put together 2 tabletops, one for the fair and then one the schools wanted to do, which we had lowest amount of attendance of the schools on that. But I wanted to thank you, because everybody kept saying, well, you won't see the state police there, and we had 3 at one of the tabletops and 2 at the other, and everybody was surprised and pleased. So thank you.
And I'll
Thank
say
you for your support and all of that.
that goes, I'll give my lieutenant a lot of credit for that.
Yes,
He's the one that even when I go to these things without him, yeah, he's coordinating that behind the scenes. He certainly, the tabletop things, he likes to put a lot, from my experience, he likes to have me kind of take the lead with some of those. And I think they're great. I do them all over now. And what you guys are doing. One for the, right, so a little bit of why I do it. I'm a member of our tactical team. And so I have active shooter training, and we train other law enforcement around the state. And the Tunbridge Fair would be a zoo. Right, so like, it's amazing that you guys are on top of it and doing those things. And even I think a lot of the feedback, I wasn't at that one. But it has come up in conversation at the other ones, and there still is a lot of questions, I think, that probably will never be. Because you can't play what if all day long at those things, but the fact that you guys are doing something is tremendous, because it will be a bad day if anything like that were to happen. And it's not that unrealistic. And I will say, I know the sheriff's around, I made a point to make sure that we were out here, and we got a couple of DUIs, which I get, like, maybe that's not great for the fair, but public safety wise, we want to make sure that people are doing the right thing. And it's, it's not that hard to get, there's so many people that go to the fair, have your neighbor drive you if you want to go down to your tent for a while. If we get you, that's on you. And I can tell you that that will be my plan from here on out. Just because I think a presence is, who knows what we could prevent just from being out there. And it's a huge undertaking for you guys, so the more of us, the better.
How does a barracks like yours work maybe with ESP or even other agencies as far as drugs coming up here? Because we know they're all going Hartford, Springfield, up to Connecticut. And you're dealing with, right, these houses you were talking about, sort of the lowest level dealers or users, so up that pipeline, how do you work with that?
So we do try to focus on interstate enforcement and for things like that, and I can tell you, so I worked out of our Westminster barracks, which was like Brattleboro and Rockingham, for the first 8 years of my career, and it's like all we did was drug interdiction for the most part, and it has changed a little bit, and it's clearly a significant problem in the state of Vermont, right? I don't want to say opiates are just there is no town unaffected by it in the entire state, right? And so we try to do details. We have drug task force that are made up of mostly troopers and some local departments that have enough folks and add people to it, and then it's kind of, as we find these things, we try to address them, and we couldn't do what we do without them, without the task force. Sometimes we get lucky too, and that helps out, but that is, and I really hate to sound like negative, and I'm not that pessimistic about it, but it's an uphill battle. That's just something I think when I was in college, we had some detectives come from, I don't remember which New England state, but they're all more or less in the same problem. And it's some crazy statistic of like, for every pound you get, there's like 1,000 more or something that were not, and that was 12 years ago. So who knows now? And certainly there are some things, I would encourage talking with your representatives and whatnot about what can be done of holding people a little more accountable. Because that's, I think, what probably the most frustrating for the community. It's frustrating for me, but I get paid to go do these things, right? Like I certainly don't love dealing with the same people over and over again, but like, that's my job. And it also ensures I have a job tomorrow too. But it's you folks, like you said, that we're dealing with the same people that are at these same houses, and they're and they aren't committing necessarily, those folks in particular aren't committing the crime of the century, and they really do probably just need help. And we don't necessarily have that infrastructure set up in the state of Vermont quite yet for like that balance of helping people and holding them accountable for their actions. And I'm sure there is a perfect solution there, but I don't know if anyone, any state or any justice system has that figured out. That would be my dream, would be in my career, we can see that. But yeah.
I had a complaint request from the village store just the other day about, like today, there probably were 15 cars, patrons parked either side of the road and cars, trucks zip by.
Okay.
Going faster than 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so anyway, just keep your eye on that.
Certainly, and I will pass that along. The deputy Hal spends the most time.
Yeah, I haven't seen him, so I
in
have
town.
to.
Yeah, and I'll make sure we have, so once again, like, I don't know if I have said this yet, but we have a great relationship with the sheriff's department. We support them in everything they do. Because we can't be everywhere, them being, having these contracts, as minor as some of them are, or some of them are bigger than others. We certainly work very well. We work with Deputy Hal all the time because of it, and he'll help us out tremendously. So we're big supporters of them and the relationships that they have with you folks, and whatever we can do to help. Well, obviously, when they're not on it, it automatically goes to us. We're on all the time. So, but if they are on, they take it and they handle it, and I'll make sure I pass it on.
Do you have any relationship with our county sheriff, the Orange County Sheriff?
I guess the answer is no. Like, I personally have never met him. I honestly, and like, I don't want to make this isn't like a dig at them or anything. I've never met an Orange County sheriff.
Never, okay.
So yeah.
Is there one?
Maybe like or a deputy, I mean, and like maybe I have like in passing, because we train a lot of people at the academy and stuff, maybe. And I just don't know it, but like out and about, I've never had an encounter at the courts, maybe. Yeah, one, like, I don't really go because I'm night shift, so I don't ever have to go to the courthouse, unless maybe to testify, but that hasn't happened.
I
In
don't
Orange
keep
County.
covering Orange County
Actually, I
courthouse
think the
anymore,
Winter County Sheriff's,
I think once.
yeah, I think Sheriff Palmer is monopolizing the state in a good way. So, yeah, I don't know, and I would encourage, like, we would support them too. But, I have no issue. I don't know enough to really think poorly or positively, I just don't know.
There's a history of you guys coming from places like Bridgewater and getting to Tunbridge faster, or Chelsea faster than our county sheriff. So,
And right, nobody's perfect, and I like I said, I don't want to dig anybody, but certainly, I think you guys have a good thing going with what you have, and if we can be around a little bit more and plus that up even more, so that's kind of my goal. If you put us together, we probably can be around a lot more than one versus the other. Well, like I said, 22 stops doesn't sound like a lot, but I can tell you too that there's times that maybe we're in town and there's nothing, some nights, right? Believe it or not, at midnight, there's not a lot going on in Tunbridge.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the only time we can have that. But that's also the time where someone might be going 100 miles per hour. And, so.
Well, I live right up on the corner, just beyond the store, and they've told somebody just the other day that there was a trooper. When I came out of the house in the morning, the trooper just sitting in the parking lot where he parked my truck. And it was amazing to see how many brake lights came on. You just saw that car.
And sometimes I will just sit right here and people look at me like they've never seen me before. And that's good, like, I hope that, because as I think anyone knows, at least, certainly I did growing up in Vermont, that even if there wasn't a trooper or a police officer there all the time, you do break going down that one hill where they always sit, whether or not they're there that day or not. So like, that's kind of my goal with this, is like, if I can't be here every day, I at least want to be in the back of everyone's mind, so we're making the roads safer even when we're not around. Cause I really don't like going to crashes, especially with fatalities or serious injuries, so if we can do our part to try to mitigate those, that's ideal. And that, once again, getting back to like anything, any complaints about that kind of stuff that you folks have, just reach out and we'll see what we can do, coordinate some things with the sheriff's department. Just, we can plug the area a couple times, see what we get out of it.
I have a question, and I just don't understand how the law works on that. Last year got brought up down to the fairgrounds when we had Thursday, we had a couple of guys running around with handguns. And I didn't realize the fairgrounds is private property and they don't want guns allowed. They don't advertise it very well, maybe, but they said they don't, it's not something they accept. But a lot of people I know are concealed carry, which to me shows a little more togetherness with the person who has the gun. But they're down there. How does that work on private property when they say they don't want to have people carrying guns?
I don't know for sure. I would have to look into that, because obviously in the state of Vermont, you don't have to have any permit or anything to carry or conceal carry. So I don't know. Because I haven't been to the Tunbridge Fair in a little while, but I don't remember there being like signs either saying.
I don't remember any signs around
And
that.
so it's hard to enforce if there's no actual, that would be. Yeah, it's different than, if you own like if the store here felt the same way and wanted to put up a sign. That would probably give them a leg to stand on. I don't know the actual law. I'd have to look that up. I don't know if I've ever dealt with that. I would say I've never dealt with that before. Usually people are just concerned with the fact that Vermonters have guns, so.
Yeah, and those two guys made themselves, I mean, they were drinking and
Yeah,
very obvious with their guns, like, don't question me, and run off. They were being belligerent. It wasn't you, I don't think, Mike. They tackled one of them right behind me.
I think there was an issue with some juveniles doing some.
Yes, it was more of a in your face.
Yeah.
And everyone knows alcohol and guns go well together.
Yeah, it's a good scene.
Well, and I think.
But it was the first time I heard that the fair did not approve of that.
I can
But
see
if
why.
they don't advertise it,
Right.
What's interesting is it may be privately owned, I mean, whatever the not-for-profit it is, but that it's open to the public too, so it's an interesting.
yeah, that's why I didn't know
I mean,
how that worked out.
You're paying to go there, so that would probably give them, if there is such a thing, that would give them, that kind of, yes, you are like a member of the public, but once you're paying to enter, that would maybe take away some of your rights. I don't know that for sure, though. I would agree that alcohol and guns is a bad day. And I think, right, like, probably every year, the beer tent results in something that ends up involving law enforcement, whether it's here or afterwards. That's just the nature of the beast. I don't care what fair it is or which gathering. If there's alcohol involved, there's probably something that is problematic down the road. And I'm not like for prohibition or anything like that. Well, this kind of is what it is.
About public places, a municipality. Do you have to put up some notice, like I'm at the State House, that you're not allowed to carry?
Yeah, so that is right, this state house,
Federal courts,
any hospital, stuff like that, there is a list of places.
schools.
And that would probably, once again, I can look into this, there might be like a subsection there of like any place that, says they don't want anyone with firearms, because we do have the grounds already rated by the state buildings and the federal buildings and hospitals and schools, but there are plenty of places that you can. Without certain, right, like. Law enforcement obviously can, which sometimes confuses people that like I can walk into a school with a firearm. Well, that's kind of the point. Yeah, exactly. So. The. You know, they might have something there, but I would say, and maybe that's something to talk about. Like. Prior to this upcoming fair, like if they want that to be a thing, we need to look into it, figure out what. Law or statute that is, that addresses it, and what they need to do in order to enforce it, because. I would say. Without any postage, how, unless you then tell someone, hey, you can't have that here, you have to leave, and then they don't wanna leave.
Yeah, it creates its own issue,
Yeah, right.
you know, unless they're the ones like those guys running around, they were making themselves obvious.
See, as they are too, they can also maybe like. The backdoor solution here would be, they could no trespass them anywhere, right? Like that could just be like, all right, if you don't wanna abide by this rule that I'm telling you is our rule, whether or not it's necessarily enforceable. By law enforcement or whatever, but it's their policy, they can say, you know, we're gonna ask that you're no trespass from here, and if you don't leave, you're arrested. Cause then, right, that becomes our problem.
Yeah, it was just a question of some of the people that I knew were, you know, responsible concealed carry that were there brought up when they tackled one of the guys right behind me.
Well, I think, you know, my opinion with anything is like firearms related. If you're like, the people that aren't gonna be a problem are the people that are concealed carry, you would never know that they're carrying a firearm.
Right, they're using some
That's not,
discretion.
you know, they have it there, for like the worst case scenario type thing, they're not just flaunting it to flaunt it. So those folks are probably gonna be a problem regardless.
Be good for us to know what. Even at meetings like this, right?
Yeah. I've,
It's just the law.
right, and I thought about that, what if someone angry comes in and
Right.
then all of a sudden starts shooting, what do we do?
Yeah. Brenda,
Yeah, there are, I mean,
Mad at me or me being mad at you?
well, could be either, right?
Brenda's that to shoot somewhere out of the three.
Instead of cookies.
and
I
we do,
only threat.
we talk about that with folks, cause obviously there's like some town offices that main lot. And you have to make appointments in order to come, because there are some folks that get angry, I can think of. Maybe it was Bridgewater recent, somewhere where like we were informed that, their clerk was gonna be making an appointment only, ensuring that, cause. And one maybe Barnard has like a little sliding glass. Like they put a window in to like a room like this, and that way they can just do everything with the wall in between them. And, you know, I'm always open to, discussing like. The safety aspects of the disgruntled individual, and what that looks like, I haven't done one yet with Tunbridge Fire, but I have been going around to. The local fire departments and doing tourniquet trainings and things like that, just to kind of spread that knowledge. So my hope is to, I think at the last tabletop, I gave my card to Chief, so hopefully I'm using. Some stuff here and spread that too, because that's just. It goes hand in hand with like issues at the fair and whatnot, like you never know, and if anyone can save a life, that's not good.
You know, tourniquets.
And hopefully too, like we're doing an event at the Sheridan Elementary School Wednesday, like things like that we can get out in the community. If you guys have any ideas, we love that. The big thing my lieutenant wants to do is just have our presence be known, and not just in like, I'm responding to your house for a call. If I can get out there and do things like this, but also like most likely we're not going to your folks' house, right? So like if we can get out there in the community for some things, if you guys have events or whatever, and you just want us to stop in and say hi.
I think it's valuable that kids especially know that when you take your uniform off, you're just a guy. If you can be a friend.
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to get in the schools, trying to go like at the high school. I did a meeting with them earlier this year, and the plan is to try to get a trooper to stop by a soccer game, or something where it's not, it's at least the first probably 5 times we show up to something like that, people are gonna be like, why are the cops?
Right.
But if they know that we're just trying to hang out and watch the basketball game or whatever it is, I think that's incredibly beneficial.
Right.
And as well as, hopefully it would just make it so every time people see us, they're not on edge, because it can be stressful. And if you guys have anything that you'd like us to kind of hop in and do that, you can.
We'll invite him to the open house at the pavilion.
Yeah,
I don't know, who was I emailing with? Or like,
It was me.
yeah, so like anything, like she has my email, but anything like that. Just shoot me an email and I can, whether it's me or one of my troopers, try to get someone to come. And even if there's other smaller tabletops or things like planning, we're certainly not experts in everything, but we can maybe at least be a sounding board.
We do plan before each fair, we go over our plan, so I'll bring it up to the chief when I meet with him tomorrow. We can invite you to that. That's always when things go wrong, it's gonna be bad.
Yeah, but I mean, right, just. I don't know, that's a
Yes.
much longer conversation. But certainly, right, and same with like the sheriff, I'm sure we'd be willing to come to anything like that and kind of do that in tandem sometimes.
What's it, just out of curiosity, what's it mean when we see like 3 or 4 sometimes?
It could mean that we happen to be, all in the same area, and it's just nothing. It's not like I've been doing this for 10 years. And I'll still get a call from one of my parents like, oh, I saw 4 troopers on the interstate.
Yeah.
And maybe I was one of them, maybe I wasn't. I try not to like burden my parents with that type of thing. But and like I know that it was like a flat tire and we just all happened to be there. Like, but and like sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes it is. So, I would work, human beings were curious and by nature, but probably not as cool or worrisome as most people think when they see a bunch of us. And if it is something, you'll probably hear about it or see it in the paper. For the things we don't think you papers. Fine.
But certain things like a domestic.
Yes.
Sometimes there's 2, you're required.
You should always, it's, right, it is our best practice, safest for everyone, if there is at least 2 of us there. And honestly, with our staffing, like right tonight, there are nights where it's a lot of nights where it's 3 of us, so there's really no point of just leaving one person that then can't go to something else really bad. So maybe it's just easier for all 3 of us to go. Or like I said, maybe we're trying to hit our towns that week and one's going to Chelsea, one's going to Stratford, and I'm stopping in Tunbridge, and you happen to see all 3 of us on 110, and it really is nothing. But that there's no like set number, or there could be times when you might see, if you see like 10 or more, it's probably something. It's like, it might be a little bit more.
That's exciting.
It's just out here, if you're leaving the barracks, if you're by our barracks and you see that, that's becoming a regular occurrence, probably, but. At least with our Bethel. Which, surrounding towns, right, it's important to know because people end up driving through and whatnot. The feedback from Bethel is that their town is like as quiet as it has been in years. So hopefully that has something to do with our troopers trying to really get out there and get after it. Because these things lead into bigger investigations and go a long way. So that's the goal of every town. And once again, I am not naive enough to think that I also like I want to have a job for at least another 10 years. So I wouldn't want to get too. No, obviously that's never. But
Pretty darn quiet.
yeah. Yeah, anyway, that's the nice thing about Tunbridge is outside of the fair. There's really not a lot that happens, maybe the occasional thing. We do recognize though that, in these, if we wanna call Tunbridge, which it's not as much so, but some of these like outskirts towns, mostly like Hancock and Granville, like, they're kind of far away for us. People certainly don't do the typical things that they maybe would do if they lived right next to our barracks in Marlton. Like keep their vehicles registered and inspected, and maybe they make a little bit too much on their, towards the end of the day. And well, just because I only say that because when we pulled them over, they're like, I've literally never seen a trooper here. And like, so we're trying to change that, and honestly, if other than, the main roads in town. There probably are a few people that if we stop somebody off of a side road, they'd be like, I don't know if I've ever seen a trooper on this road in Tunbridge, right? And that's probably fair. And that might be where, and I grew up in Vermont, so this is, people, the folks that I grew up around and friends with our family, but the people that maybe go from one farm to the other after having a few beers and don't even think anything of it, and they've been doing it forever, and there's never been a cop on that road before. Maybe there's gonna be one now, who knows, and the idea behind that is like, we just want people being safe and making sure that, like I said, I've been to way too many bad things, terrible things, and I've seen way too many fatalities from things that probably were preventable. That's like my overall goal, is to eliminate those. And sometimes it means ruining someone's night, but never their life. It's just that Vermont, you don't get in that much trouble. Where'd you go? I was
Well, if you come up behind a blue international scout, don't try to catch it, because they probably outrun you.
Knows the back roads better than I do.
Go up to 35 miles an hour.
Just going to the cousins.
And might be dripping a little oil too.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, very
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we'll try to poke in, we do this ideally once a year, but certainly if you have any concerns, I can come to. I work night shift, so like this is normal for me, to be on, that's out of my way. We could always pop in remotely, some towns just have us do that, but. Or just call us and we'll do what we can do.
What's night shift, what hours?
17 is 5 PM to 02.
So it's true that there's nobody on coverage.
So we are, it depends, like obviously we could be out on something and then if something comes in, we're not that far away. But we do operate on an on-call system, so from 2 to 4:30 night shift is on call after that. And we do at this point, right? We don't have any troopers that live in Tunbridge, but we do have troopers, great folks, so that's good. You guys have a couple police officers that live in town, though, right? Maybe Barry.
Yeah.
Local
North
guys.
Tunbridge, living in Tunbridge.
Yeah, trying to recruit them.
Buddy Dan on tonight, working down.
And yeah, hopefully it'd be nice to, I think one of them lives like right now, at least I see the cruiser not that too far down the road. Nice to make that a green and gold. Yeah, that will pay more.
Got a retirement.
All right, I'll leave a couple cards, for you guys, need them, and then maybe I'll leave 2 cards. If you guys don't want consent cards, just put your people.
What's in the sky?
You might not want to look at mine.
Yeah. Thank you. So, yeah, don't feel free to call us, anonymous tips, whatever. Sure, we're trying to help you folks out as much as possible.
Thank you.
9933 is the barrels.
Yeah, I think you have to press 3. Or else it goes to like a voicemail for our admin, 3 is the dispatch. And then they'll probably push it through to me. Or there's two other sergeants that work. So,
And we'll get hold of you before the events.
yeah,
Planning.
we
Thanks.
certainly, we can get somebody, I'm sure. Is that my lieutenant is pretty big on that stuff.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If you think of anything after I make it, shoot me an email or anything like that.
No, I get it, right?
This is correct, yeah.
8 months until here then.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about
It's so nice, they put it still trying to do the last file. Matt, you're up next. Yeah.
I'll switch with you, Matt.
I didn't tap you guys for a few minutes, but I'm not usually on there.
Let's do it.
Right, and I have not been much.
Yes.
Yeah, you like Colby, yeah, they're graduate.
We like Colby.
That we're going.
Yep. Yep. All right, Matt, you're on.
Yeah, so. You want an update? What are you guys looking for? Just,
Were you stressed because of the market volatility or?
No?
Yeah.
I'll be
It was more the. With the end of the fiscal year coming out,
so, I mean,
what funds are available to certain groups, including us,
Yeah.
if there was a project, for example, whether it's roads or town improvement type stuff.
right, so generally we haven't changed our disbursement criteria over like the last 10 years, and that's generally we allow 4% of whatever we have in the account, assuming that there's no precipitous decline and no terrible market conditions. Generally speaking, we ask that we get requests so that we can give checks before the end of the fiscal year, because it makes it really difficult to report if we give a check in June and it gets cashed in July. And as you know, we have 2 cemetery accounts, the school library account, the town library account, special projects, highway, fire department. And all but special projects funds, clearly, cemetery funds benefits cemeteries, volunteer fire department benefits volunteer fire department. The special projects fund doesn't have any restrictions other than sort of the wishes of the grantor, which were generally she was looking to have the funds go to projects that benefited the townspeople. So one thing she talked about was insulating the town offices. One thing she specifically said in a letter was she didn't want it going to benefit breakfasts, for instance. Yeah, so I think it was
That letter,
the letter is someplace, yeah.
that's my other,
Exactly.
we should all be so flush as.
And so that is an account that we have given more than 4% of the principal amount in past times. So they're all of these rules are sort of the rules that we set as trustees. They're not set in stone, so I mean, operating within sort of like, we have an obligation of a fiduciary obligation to account for what's in the accounts and to not use them frivolously.
Some of the grantors put limitations on, so that's kind of our job, is to make sure the grantors' restrictions are being honored. You know, way back, the Edith Grant Fund, they actually had to go back to the public board. Cause she paid too much money. You know, it was just for like periodicals or something, and there was just a ton of money, and it was generating a huge amount of annual return. And so some wise select board, you know, paid an attorney to go to probate court and say, can it go to more than just periodicals? I think it was around the time the addition was put on, because I think
Oh, yeah.
some of the, you know, when they, that's what your pictures in the library, you know, I think that paid for a lot of improvements.
And so we have in recent years been trying to coordinate with Becky a little bit.
Yeah,
to-
Becky just put in a request for the cemetery for the mowing, you know, that's an every year thing. And
We met with the school librarian.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the mowing that comes out of the public cemetery fund, so there is actually a state regulation that says that cannot fall below $100,000. And right now, it's at 100, well, that was March, but there's plenty of, you know, I think it's been about a $3,000 request every year, so there's enough of a cushion. There was a time.
There was a time when we, right,
It was
before,
fell below. And
Why
that
can't it
was
fall below?
in the state regulation.
no, I think it's a limitation,
I
I
think
thought it
that's a
was
state rule.
okay.
I think part of the reason being it's a public cemetery, so the town has to maintain enough money so it can be taken care of in perpetuity.
I get it.
So it's yours, you know.
Yeah.
The state picked, you guys picked that $100,000 mark, you know, and at some point it might actually have to increase.
Right, yeah.
But the notion being that,
That will generate enough money.
right, yeah, the town government has an obligation, because the people, you know, like when Becky sells the plots, that goes into that public cemetery fund. And the people buying the plots have an expectation that they'll be taken care of in perpetuity, so that one, that's the only fund that has a state law regulating. And then everything else is just the grantors themselves, if they put a restriction on.
Well, like another example is, and we'd have to go back, the highway funds can be used to improve the highways, but I don't think they can be used to build a new equipment shed.
Yeah, I forgot.
So there are some restrictions, right, but at the end of the day, money's fungible, so if we say you have to use this money only to grade or whatever, we free up other money that can be used for other purposes. So the restrictions without too much teeth. I mean, the same thing for the school library fund. At least the Edith Grant portion has to be used to buy books and periodicals, and we will use it for online subscriptions, but
I can't pay like the salary or the electric bill, or it's just materials. And then this year, thanks to, I think, the FEMA money that came in, so maybe to back up and you know, sort of ideally, and I actually chatted with you, Mary Ann, about this with respect to the village cemetery, because you know, somebody made a big bequest, so that account suddenly has a good amount of money in it. And so you know, when something appears in the town budget, that helps us plan. You know, so like Becky always puts in a certain amount for the highway fund. Now this year, she said, actually, thanks to that FEMA money, we're not gonna make a request because they actually have a surplus right now. But when we talked to David Gold, who manages the money, we ask that he keep a certain amount of cash on hand. And we sort of rely on what's been budgeted in here, so the highway department's probably one of the bigger ones, because they usually take, I don't know, 13 or 15. You know, so it's important having a certain amount of cash, actually. That money is there, so if the value of the equities and the bonds plummet. That money's already, like, it doesn't affect that cash that's been set aside for that purpose. So, so yeah, it's almost like. The budget that gets approved by the town. Gives us a heads up as far as what dispersal is gonna be asked for ultimately.
Where does that, say, money go? Like, is it destined for a specific fund, or does Becky just use it to sort of plug holes in the highway?
That probably is a Becky question,
Okay.
cause she puts in the request.
Yeah.
And then we cut the check, and so,
Yeah, I
she does a
mean,
much more detailed. Her accounting is much more detailed.
but she also sits in all our meetings effectively, because she's right there when we're, and it is, that is the other thing that. We've run into the problem with the school library where. The recipients are supposed to spend the money that we give them in the year that in the fiscal year that we grant it. And we have had a problem with the school because the money would go to the supervisory union and then the supervisory union would just hoard it.
Oh.
And that's definitely not either the intention of the state regulations or Edith Grant.
Yeah, well, and part of the issue was that we had a librarian. Puts in the request and then she's gone, and then there were 2 years, I think there was no school librarian. And you know, luckily the business manager is also pretty detail oriented, so. You know, at one point there was a $6,000 dispersal, they didn't know where it came from, and they treated it just as a donation to the general fund. And that's not the Edith Grant,
Right.
yeah, purpose, so she was able to kind of track that down.
She's an assistant treasurer now too, so that helps.
Oh, is she? Terrible. Wonderful, great. So, and Donna before her, like, had to do some similar sleuthing. To find money that went unaccounted for, that the, you know, prior trustee Townsend had, thank God, had a, you know, sharp eye. And knew, you know, the trustees had cut a check and it never showed up in the school reporting as revenue. So, you know, I think Donna, it took her like 3 months to find that money, and it had to be refunded actually to the Edith Grant Fund because it wasn't spent on library material. So, yeah, so again, that's kind of partially our job, is to make sure that the dispersed money is going for its intended purpose. But certainly for anything within the town, you know, Becky.
And I think getting back to the process, we. And this was something that Liz instituted, is we do send notices to all of the recipients at. Like April, or I guess after town meeting.
Yeah, we used to do more regular check-ins and without much response, so I have to confess, I haven't emailed the fire department.
But just
In
saying.
a couple of years, because they never request, so it's like, okay, they're just letting that money build, and it's, I think, compared to their budget. Yeah, it's 50,000, you know, so they've just.
And
let
the
that
fire
money
department
sit.
just sits up, so yeah, and that's, so getting. Under state regulation. Vermont towns have trustees who have to hold in trust cemetery funds. Maybe school funds, and then any other funds that are. Given in trust to the town, but something like. The town library. Has control of its own funds. They give them to us to manage, but I mean, there's a little bit of a tug of war there. And then the volunteer fire department, we don't get any of the money that they collect when they.
Well, maybe you guys have the answer to that question about the town library, because for a long time we assumed they were a 501c3 nonprofit. And so it was, you know, sort of like, oh, it gets lumped in with the rest of the town funds, which gives them benefits like low fees and, you know, all the, like, the more money you invest with one person. And then, so it was sort of like, oh, but they are a nonprofit with their own board, you know, we went and gave a presentation at one point. And then somebody said, oh no, they're not a 501c3. And that at some point they also changed governance, so they really are a public library now. They're part of town government.
But their budget gets approved by us.
Yeah, so that,
I don't
which
know
again,
what their
if
staff.
they were a nonprofit, you wouldn't be overseeing it, so. So anyways, I think that's part of why there's this kind of fuzziness around, you know, historically, they were like, I think there was a point where the money was not even with the town money, way back.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and then, and this is where Rob's institutional memory would be helpful, cause he thought, oh, it originally came from the Village Improvement Fund or something that, you know.
That is true.
Yeah.
At least
so
the
it's
Village
been
Improvement Fund,
dispersed,
yeah,
that
bought the,
committee, yeah, kind of just, so anyways, but at this point, and like the library this year, similarly, they budget, they used to trade it more like a rainy day fund, and then they had a change with their board makeup, and they said, no, we want it to be an annual thing. They budgeted for it, you know, between 6,000 and 8,000, and then when I checked in, they were like, oh, no, actually, our fundraising was phenomenal this year, so we're foregoing that annual dispersal, so. So yeah, but we hope or look to the budget that gets improved, the town budget. Certainly for highway and cemetery, we look to the library budget, because they, again, that's in their, you know, planned revenue. And similarly, the school too, it should be appearing as, you know, anticipated revenue.
Yes, Mary.
Yeah, so that was actually my question, because I met with the cemetery commission and they wanted what they were considering an off-cycle request, and they didn't understand if they could or could not do that, and so it's for the fencing.
Right.
And they wanted to know if there was, so they need to replace the fencing on the cemetery. They were wondering about the opportunity of versatile funds for that. Could they make a special request if they had not requested it as part of the planning process and the budget and the approval at town meeting day? And I was unclear whether or not these funds have to have been approved for allocation at town meeting and in the book, or if they can actually submit a request for, you know, an off cycle, like they want to submit a request for $7,000 for fencing. Can they do that like in July
Without budgeting.
without having budgeted?
so I mean, I think we'd have to meet and talk with Laura as well. I think. The factors I think we'd consider would be, would that bring them in excess of the 4% disbursement? And then just in general, part of it is just. It makes it easier for us if we get all of our requests at one time, and so it's easier to just cut the checks once, but there's no reason we wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
I
I was
would
gonna
say,
say, like, people say, we budgeted for a request and we're not making it, you know. And to Matt's point, if it's within the 4%.
Yeah.
That's you're sort of anticipating the possibility of that every year.
Right.
Because that's sort of the prudent withdrawal rate, and that's certainly like when the library was like, we wanna make annual withdrawals and we want it to be that 4%. And so, I guess the other thing I would say is, you know, the public cemetery fund pays for the mowing. The village cemetery fund historically doesn't get tapped at all. And that large bequest that came in rather recently is for the upkeep of the village cemetery to make it look nice.
Yeah.
So right now, and do your mental math, you know, there's 215,000 in there, so 4%
Right.
is.
Right. Well, it's 8,000 or
Safely
7,500 or
eight
something. Yeah.
is, and. I don't,
Well, and that's not the village. That doesn't include the village cemetery.
no, that's the total, the village cemetery fund now currently has 215.
Right, and what about the,
Public cemetery,
yeah,
thereabouts, this is March.
so like, really, between the two.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, so, but yeah, the public cemetery fund is for mowing all the cemeteries, the village cemetery fund. Is to keep the village cemetery nice, and now has much more money than it used to, thanks to a generous Tunbridge resident. So yeah,
Does that
so.
include the park too, because there's some weird line of demarcation too between the two.
Who owns it? The park.
What did we hear?
The town technically, I think Baxter said, owns the lower part.
Right.
It isn't cemetery. but
Really?
The tomb is, yeah.
the town owns the park, but not the cemetery.
Right, something.
But don't tell us that.
I thought the whole village cemetery was given to the town years ago, which
So it
is,
could be. That's what I would treat it.
Yeah,
right.
that's the way we were gonna treat it as well.
Well, and my understanding was when the cemetery was given to the town, a small amount of money was given. Probably whoever was privately running it had that little
Yeah.
nest egg. And that's how the original village cemetery fund was created, it was like, we're giving you the cemetery, we're also giving you some money. And then who gave us the big bequest? Do you guys remember?
Annie Labor.
Annie Labor.
Yeah.
That, she more than doubled.
Yeah.
So now suddenly,
But this is known as the Hoyt Memorial Park.
I
and so
do remember, that, there's a inholding in the
Yeah.
cemetery of the park, or it's all.
it's a cemetery as far as.
Yeah, I think,
Just cemetery. Yeah, wait, I can check,
no, I have an app that shows private, and it says it's all village cemetery.
You have an app.
Yeah,
That
that shows private.
it's private,
Yeah, no, that shows all the private ownership. It shows all the land records.
oh,
And
okay,
it says that that's all the village cemetery.
and it's all owned
Yeah.
by the town.
No, it says all village it all says all Tunbridge Village. Village cemetery, well, it says town of Tunbridge, Tunbridge Village Cemetery. That's what it says. So we don't have to resolve this now, but I think,
Oh.
yeah.
I would,
I-
that looks like it's owned by the town.
Yeah.
government, Yeah, so anyways, to answer your question, yes, there's absolutely money there, and, we can double check. We did just roll over all of the funds, not for the run, anyways, there's an 18-month restriction on us making withdrawals from the principal. Not that we can't, but there's gonna be an added fee, but again, there should be cash in the account, I'll double check and get that number to you. But if you request it in July, that is great, because that's the beginning of the fiscal year, and then you've got the whole year to spend it. So yeah, rather than trying to request it June and like under the wire, it would be better to,
Are they looking to do it all in wrought iron or?
I don't know, I'm happy to actually not be in the middle of this loop, but the only reason why I ended up in the middle of it is because they have an active. VOCA, the old cemeteries grant that's ongoing, and I was meeting with them for that, and they started asking me about this, and I was like.
Yeah.
Not my area of expertise, so just if,
But yeah,
you know, if you all wanna connect with Baxter and Dennis
Oh,
and Elaine were the ones who were at the meeting.
to any of, my recollection is no one on the cemetery commission had an email or responded to email.
no, and look, the cemetery committee, we used to meet regularly when Aaron Gooch was on.
Oh, yeah.
But it was still, even then it was Aaron and Baxter and Euclid, I think, and.
So Baxter, I periodically see here.
Right, you don't run into him.
He's not here all the time, but Elaine does use email.
Oh, okay,
And so that's how I ended up at a meeting with them.
okay,
I got
maybe I'll,
invited to a meeting and then that's. how-
Well,
I've got-
Elaine knows how to make requests because she used to as a school librarian.
yes, true, and I've got her email thanks to Pies.
So I think they were under the impression.
That can make me.
I- Yeah, so they were under the impression that the process was that they had to ask for it in advance and that they missed it for the year kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, well, you know, if I happen to be in the room with anybody that knows, I'll ask. So that's why I put it up.
Yeah,
But that would be helpful for them to know that there's this, because they are actively working on this fence situation.
yeah,
And I don't know where they.
Is there a lot of grant money available or not very much?
No, not for fence.
right, I was just saying, isn't it strictly, and you can't even replace stones, right, you have to.
For the old cemeteries, it's not replacement, it's fixing, it's resetting, it's, but for other grants for cemeteries, there is some grant money for like purchasing stones and things, but it's not for.
Yeah.
Fencing, and it's not for maintenance, it's not for brush clearing, like there's very strict restrictions on.
And Becky said, unfortunately, true wrought iron is extremely
Yes.
expensive, so they might be looking at something different.
Yeah, I don't know where they, do you know where they landed?
They were gonna look at plastic, but
Oh, that's,
Like buying.
they should just do some fundraising at the fair. I mean, it just seems to be like the fair, but Tunbridge has 1 million cemeteries. Please help preserve them.
Preserve one of them.
Yeah.
One we can all see.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'll reach out to Elaine. So you can.
That's easy.
Yeah, sort of retrieve,
Myself,
at least,
and I think Baxter's the one who's doing the active research around the fence, and that's,
yeah.
so he's
Contract, but-
getting the quotes on the expenses.
Yeah, all right.
Then any of the organizations that are the recipients, use those funds as collateral for loans, is that?
Oh, no, and I think you explicitly cannot. This
Yeah,
is,
I-
yeah, this.
We can look the regulation. I don't,
Okay.
yeah.
But that is, because it's funny, cause there's. As Matt was saying, there's like regulation that governs our behavior and. I'm more familiar with like the prudent investor or whatever, but this is because Edward Jones is constantly. Promoting that if you have an account with them, they can give you a line of credit.
Right.
You know, they want you to borrow against, and I'm pretty sure that that activity is explicitly forbidden for trust, at least.
There are restrictions on, we could not take all the money and go to Vegas and we couldn't put it in junk funds, and I'm sure.
But they kept being like, well, yeah, like they keep wanting to authorize us to borrow, and it's like, no, we are. I kept being like, do not, because we are forbidden from doing that, but I can't remember where I saw that we are forbidden. But yeah, so that might be in the regulations that govern our office, trustees of public funds, is that like you are forbidden from borrowing on the. Cause you could see if we were authorized to borrow in the name of Tunbridge, right? And then that money disappears.
Just a bad practice. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, like you just, I mean, shenanigans or not. Yeah. You guys are the only ones who can borrow, or I guess if people vote on bond, but yeah, I kinda. In my mind, there's like a.
So even in the event of an emergency, whatever that might be, you're sort of. 4%, it's.
No, in the event of an emergency, that is just our policy.
You could, the endowment.
Well, we we're subject to certain restrictions, like Edith Grant. There are some which restrict us from dipping into principal, and even in an emergency, we can't dip into principal.
Right, yeah.
There are others, Edith Grant says. If in an emergency, the library burned down and we wanted to rebuild the physical structure, I don't think we could use those funds to build the physical structure. We could use it to put books in the structure.
Yeah.
But for instance, if we had a flood and it washed away all the town equipment, subject to restriction, whatever the amount is, that it can only be used for highway repair, we can take all of that and authorize it to be spent on buying town equipment.
Right, yeah. So it's really fun by fun.
Yeah. And even there, I mean, I'm sure there's stuff in deeds that we don't know about. Because what we have are the notes that Pete Jorgensen and Scott Terry put together.
The highway fund is just a handwritten memo from Nancy Hack. Speaking with the manager.
Yep.
Like, she just wrote down his intentions,
Yep.
so, and thank God she did.
Right.
Right.
Otherwise you wouldn't know.
Yeah,
He's long gone.
right.
All money should go towards West Tunbridge. Right, at the bottom. Well, that's good.
All right.
So, well, especially that Becky's so involved.
Yeah.
So she really knows where money's going, so. It's not as if.
No, she truly is
Some great
there at
opportunities
every
that
one
missed
of
by the recipient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's us, Becky and Rudy.
Right, we like
Yeah.
crashed our office hours, there's, whether she wants to speak or not, she's having to listen to that. But yeah, really the only beneficiary who we haven't been in regular contact with recently is the fire department. Otherwise, we
I
check.
know they're using some of that for the truck,
Well, I'm sure they're using a lot of different things for that
Well,
truck.
that's what I was wondering. That would be
Yeah.
an example where, since they've
Right.
passed up on using it for so long, but.
Well, that's what, they have a budget where they're always saving a certain amount for the next truck.
Exactly.
Because they're so,
Like a cap.
actually, I noticed the state had made a comment about the expense of fire trucks.
Yeah.
That they're. Should
When
be
that's supposed to be. Right.
on fall.
Oh, so not too far. away.
Is Simon the chief still, and is Jenna still the treasurer?
I believe Becky is
Oh,
now.
Becky's the treasurer. Okay, well then maybe we are in regular contact with the fire department without even knowing it. She's the treasurer for the fire department.
I think she's a recent one.
Okay, yeah, all right, interesting. Well then, that's easy enough for me to. But yeah, they, for so many years, they were like, pass.
Right.
So that's it from us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Good education. Get home before it rains again.
I know.
Yeah, that will open.
Thank you, Amy.
Last week I was 91. It's too hard for money, so. Thank you guys. So they come swim with me and they're like, no. So yeah, just, I'm a text away, please.
Right. Oh,
Yeah, I'm looking for percent pay raise.
you can have a lot.
Thank you. That was easy.
What do you get now?
Zero is still zero, isn't it?
You didn't have to point that out. Ruin my.
I thought there's a stipend, like a $40 stipend and a sandwich or something.
Yeah, really. Something,
What do you want to talk to us about, Brenda?
absolutely nothing, you just have to go through the formality or decide you want somebody else.
Make a motion to. And the feeling beyond Cherokee as reappoint. As Vermont Fire Board member
And assistant.
and assistant board.
Is John the assistant?
Yep.
You second that.
All in favor of Mike's great motion, say aye.
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 And there should be something there for Brenda to sign. Should be right in front of you, Gary.
Yep, I see it.
Congratulations, Brenda. That's so exciting.
And my pay raise too.
How many years have you been in this?
Then there's stuff. Whoops.
Oh,
a
nice
lot.
going.
At least they bought it.
I'm up to getting nice prizes from the state.
Oh, they pass it on.
Your account.
Who's the dean of Vermont Fire Wardens, like who's been at it long? One or two.
Yeah, I'm
Boy,
getting,
and all
I'm
scared,
getting up,
who's been at
I'm
it.
getting up there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
make your party.
Was it 50 years or something, that's more so.
Wetland.
have things changed considerably in 50 years being a fire warden?
Well, my boss is really a sort of, work in parts, and so they've changed a lot.
Yep.
They've changed personnel.
What you do is the same, similar?
They changed that a little bit. They used to, I don't have to fill out a time report now after a mutual aid call, and that's actually helpful.
Oh,
Helps
yeah.
back on the departments with their mutual aid agreements.
Yep.
With national park, nearing national park. And that was a lot of work.
So the commissioner is sort of boss of the fire wardens.
Yeah, and annually they require that we have meetings that lately we've been doing by Zoom, but usually they're really stay in touch with us. They're pretty good people. They're just down to earth people.
Really.
Those employees are, kind of like us. And they like an excuse to get out of the office and come down and just shoot the shit.
Well, that's in my committee too, so if you ever want,
Oh, it is,
yeah.
yeah, I like them. They
Worst part
changed
of my-
hands a lot recently, a lot of new people.
Really?
Yeah, my new person that coordinates this area is new to me.
Mary Ann, do you have other business?
I do.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I missed Rodney's report, so some of these may be questions that you may refer me back to Rodney. But Mariah forwarded along the opening of the request for proposals for the Vermont Building Codes Reduction Financial Assistance Grant. And I just don't know enough about the truck that we're talking about to know if it might qualify. Are we talking about a new truck?
We haven't taken delivery of our new truck yet. But we have one on the way. I mean, that's it.
Okay, so we've already ordered it.
Yeah.
That might include it from being.
But no,
included.
no money has been exchanged, right? Right.
But it's ordered,
Yes,
Yes.
we're building it.
so unfortunately that precludes it, this application over, it says. So one of the criteria you have to say is my proposed project is not yet underway, and that includes ordered, purchased, financed, installed, so that bumps us out. We're not looking at a second truck that we haven't ordered yet, right?
They may soon, because it's becoming like a 2-year out thing,
Right.
you should definitely keep us.
Yeah, how long is this?
The application's due June 23rd.
Does it come up annually or something?
I don't know, it looks like it is frequent,
Yeah.
cause this is the second request, so we should consider it, but, so I'll move to my second topic, which will help with this. I was thinking that even if the truck we were looking at qualified, we might not actually be able to submit the application, because one of the things that this requires is that we have to have proof of annual fuel usage and mileage or hours in use, etc. And this keeps coming up on grants that I'm looking at, is that we, for the roads, we have to be able to prove that we've done maintenance, how frequently maintenance is done. And often, like if you say that the maintenance that you've done, to prove that this issue with whatever washed out the road wasn't because we don't do maintenance, you have to be able to prove maintenance, and so you have to prove how much gravel you've put on the road, how many times you've graded it, etc. And this is a major deficit in our current setup. Like, I can't pull that information, we can't prove that, like Becky and I, for one, we tried to like go back through timesheets and see when the guys might have said like they work on Stratford Road, but there's just not enough information there to be able to say like
That would be hard.
what it,
not to
you know,
track
and that would be
stuff
wasted,
too.
yeah,
Well, they can track it on the cell phone. It'd be easy.
yeah.
You know, if anybody
Yeah,
learned,
yeah.
I mean, people do that stuff all the time.
Yes, so that's part of what I'm here to pitch is, I think that as, maybe you're not, we don't have it right now, but. As we move forward, we should consider implementing the software that allows you to do that. So there are grants that we are precluded from applying for because I can't prove that we've done the road maintenance, or in this case, like. I'm gonna have a hard time proving how much this, like, so, and this one is a replacement, you have to have a truck that you're replacing.
Yeah.
With a more efficient engine. And I would have to prove how much the truck we're replacing has been used, and that includes fuel usage, mileage, hours, purposes of the vehicle. So just as an FYI, if we want to continue to try to chase some of these grants as we go forward here, we will need to start to look at an electronic system where and it doesn't necessarily have to be the guys. I mean, if there's a way when the timesheets are submitted, that even basic information could then be coded by somebody in the office saying, these are the roads that were worked on this week, and you know, we knew
Does it
that.
have to be over the lifetime of the truck you're replacing, because then.
No,
It
so
could just be like a whole year of the truck.
it's the past year. So this one says my application includes proof of annual fuel usage and mileage or hours of operation for the past year. And then it gives options, it says could include but not limited to international registration plan reports, fuel logs, fuel purchase receipts, odometer readings, mileage recordings, hours readings.
Because as a pilot, we could do it just to the next truck that's being replaced, and then the transition in with these.
Well, as far as like mileage goes and hours on the engine, they're easy because the truck keeps track of that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So you just have to have a beginning number and an end number.
Right, and if you're starting, or you're starting 1st of July,
Right.
you can do all of them right now.
We run them all.
They should start
And then if you,
July.
it probably gives you, probably the new trucks, even give you the miles per gallon you're getting and stuff like that, so that would, you could do the math and figure out
Yeah,
approximately how many
usage.
gallons you used. So it wouldn't be hard, super hard to do.
So we should do that for July 1. If we
Yeah.
can, if we have any intention of replacing another truck.
Like in Brookfield, they used to have a footboard when they put diesel fuel in. about 3.
Right.
And then 28 gallons or something, but
Yeah.
not. We can track that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't do it, it's an effort.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, maybe you can start with whatever rod struck or whatever was nice enough to replace.
Right.
It might be 2 years out, but at least we should start now.
And that's just some interesting things to know.
Right.
if we do them all, we won't forget.
Yeah, 10 years from now, it'll just be something you do.
Right.
Yep, and then looking at that stuff, there are plenty of towns that use this software that has a pretty basic, recording so that we can know what roads, like. I think I would love to know the amount of time we spend in material and hours grading Monarch, right? Like over the course of 5 years, we might have paid it, right?
Right.
There was no ulterior motive to my madness, I want Monarch paved. But point being,
Pretty thoughtful.
Two of us now that want to pay.
if we ask Lori, I bet there's 3 of us.
No, I love numbers like that, just, and at the farm, I write stuff on the calendar or this or that, just so I can keep track of things, and it's just interesting to know.
And it would allow us to apply for some more grants, and then also I just think some things like that, like it would allow us to say, oh my God, like we spent $300,000 maintaining whatever road. Mary White, like,
Yeah.
Jesus, we gotta do something different with Mary White, why are we always fixing Mary White, whereas right now, it just happens, so.
And I'm really interested with this new material we're buying.
Yeah.
If in 10 years, are we gonna look back and say, that was a smart thing we did?
Right. And we won't know for 10 years maybe either.
Right, at least for a few years.
What was your statistic if you,
So,
your statistic that guy gave us, like how much you
3 years.
it's totally gone.
Yeah.
Then if it rains hard, it's even nicer than
And I think the other thing you all had asked, and I think I sent Mariah an update, but I'll just tell you verbally that, you'd asked about the MERP. The buildings.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, Two Rivers is managing that for us.
Okay.
They sent it out for bid. They didn't get bids except for the HVAC. They're supposed to be prepping it to send out for bid again. I'm getting nervous. I follow up with them frequently about like.
Because we're on a deadline right now.
There is a deadline for getting the work done,
Mhm.
and the deadline, 26, but it's also like, it's not just like 12/31/26, it's like by 9/1, you have to have 60% completed and proof that you'll be done by 12/1, and then by 12/31, all the receipts have to be submitted, like, it's pretty like.
Yeah.
So the new update there is that, our contact Kirk Malin, who's working with us on the solar project.
Yeah.
From the Vermont Law School, the visiting professor. He reached out to Two Rivers on our behalf and offered up their services for that portion of the MERP grant as well. And it looks like he and our contact from Two Rivers are gonna try to work closely together and see if they can make any movement, at least on the Tunbridge MERP grant.
Yeah.
Through the Vermont Law School helping out.
Oh, good.
They would help.
So
So
I've already second time, no.
hopefully that will help us move that project forward, because I am nervous about that.
Yeah.
Not having. Getting bids, not having a contract in place with someone who's gonna actually do the work and then scheduling the work.
And having time to
And if you-
thought all the advice.
It gives local contractors involved.
Yes, I was hopeful we would, but we didn't. I think they're also all booked out for like a year.
Right. All the good ones
An
are
opportunity.
to branch out. Now that you're retired, I think you can.
How was Carousel?
You'd be pretty impressed if it's down the hill.
Yes. It was a bit more, industrialized than we usually do.
Yeah.
But it was more like typical Bahamas unit than it was.
Yeah.
Roatan or like the is, but it was fabulous. On to the next vacation.
That's right.
I think St. Martin is for next
Oh,
year.
really?
That's what we're looking at, St. Martin or St. Lucia. And all similarly, all in the Caribbean, just all the different varieties down there.
Personality, so.
All right, bye Mariah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Do we need Mariah for anything more?
Well, I just need you for 1 second. I got an email from Michael Tarrant today, and he wants to talk with you guys by the end of the week. He didn't know if you guys had time, like maybe Thursday to hop on a Zoom call, just for a short executive session.
It's just like Tarrant.
It wouldn't even have to be a Zoom call. You guys, we could do a dial-in phone conference and you could just talk on the phone with them if we didn't want to come in the office because it's going to be an executive session.
Well, we'll meet at Thunder Road.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be Thursday. He just wanted to meet before the end of the week.
Oh, we ain't got much.
You guys wanna do it tomorrow night or Friday night?
I'll meet Thursday. Tomorrow.
I'm try it tomorrow night, like 8 o'clock or something, or is that too late for you guys?
Oh, no, it'll be 10 minutes.
How long is it gonna be, do you know?
10-15 minutes.
I mean, I gotta come home anyway, so I'll be here. It's a trip for you guys.
Well, I can meet you, Gary, at the office, and then you and me can get on Zoom, and then if John, you or Mike want to just join on the Zoom link, we can just do it on Zoom quick.
He sent out the invite, that's right.
Yeah. I can do that.
Do I remember how to do that?
You will. Yeah. Sherry can help you.
Remember when you broke your leg when the officer tackled you at the fair when you were brandishing?
Brandishing my handguns.
So what time did you want it for tomorrow?
8 o'clock tomorrow night.
8 o'clock tomorrow night, heard. Okay.
Oh my God, sometimes I'm not.
I will put out a warning for an emergency executive session, and then I'll see you down there tomorrow night at 8.
Okay, he's coming here.
Yeah. You guys can come here too.
Just send me a
Reminder,
Yeah.
email.
with an emoji.
Okay. That's all I have. I'll send them an email right now.
Did they win the game?
They did in extra innings, they got a walk-off run, so now they're going to Centennial.
Nah,
On you go.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Semifinal?
I could never be so lucky to have him lose and then, be home a little sooner than he was gonna be, but it's okay.
You're on Zoom, you're live.
Yeah.
Gotta add that, let the minutes reflect what you just said.
Yeah, no, I will. Mariah is annoyed that no, it's fine. I'm glad he won. He's come this far. He should win. I'd be annoyed if he had lost and came this far, so.
For the kids.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all I had. Dutch is still awake, so I'm gonna go try to put him to sleep, and I'll see you at 8 p.m. tomorrow, Gary.
Great, thank you. I'll
Thank
see you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.